that, they have to find them and try to take.
That's your opinion. We can debate that part, but I just want to make sure
Let's debate that part then.
But look how we see how we developed common ground. I said yes to your questions. Yeah. See, I didn't even qualify
but
my
you
yes.
You wanted to build before common ground.
No, but that's not. But
on the statement that Gaza is an open-air prison, which he didn't agree on, and you wanted to force a conversation on that premise as a
I have no. Okay.
So but forget about that. Now you guys have got common ground.
Wait. If that's what if the goal here, and he should be very clear and open about it. If the goal here is to debate whether or not it's an open-air prison, it would not be productive to begin on October 7th. That's ridiculous.
Okay, where do you want to begin?
Well, I was already going down.
Productive to start during maybe like the Nakba, and how the people ended up in where they live and where the borders are, or where there are no borders, where Israel claims they have borders, but they're not recognized by the international community.
And why do you? Okay, that's where you want to start. But why you don't want to start on October 7th, and on where we are right now?
Because of course it's absurd to say on October 7th a group of people did something atrocious, and then somehow they became at that moment by their own very free will part of an open-air prison. Like, that doesn't even follow.
Okay, why don't we go back?
I will tell you that anybody that comes against me with warfare, I will fucking fuck them up.
July of 1914.
Yeah. Why don't we do that?
Okay.
I will fucking fuck them up. What are you talking about?
Okay. Pretty critical years. So during
they're like, it's October 7th.
You can say in February.
They're like October fucking like that, bro. I will fuck you up.
In regards to how Great Britain would support the Arabs of Hijaz. Would you agree to that?
Sure.
Okay. So those conversations were taking place, and Great Britain had been doing its thing in that area, right? Then what happens? In mid 1914, mid-ish, later-ish, a war breaks out, right? Also known as World War I.
Okay. Well, yeah. Okay. So now we're what, 1917?
Well, the war lasted between 1914 and 1918, kind of.
Okay.
And so you had these allies and Central Powers fighting throughout Europe and Middle East, right? And it ends up being that there's a loser. And do you know who the losing side was?
In World War II? Sorry, World War I.
Yeah, World War I.
In World War I, it was the Germans.
But there was another ally to the Germans.
Italy.
That's true, but there was another very significant player that's more significant to our conversation.
Oh, I'm sorry, not Italy. Who was it?
The Ottomans?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Ottomans.
The Ottomans.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Right.
I always forget about those fucking
Turkish
turkeys.
Of that war from the Ottoman standpoint?
I mean, what's your opinion? Go ahead.
So, if you don't know, I can tell you, but if you have an opinion, I'd love to hear it.
Are you talking about British-mandated Palestine?
Hello?
Hello?
I'm not there yet. Okay?
Hello?
Hello?
Right. It is my understanding
Hello?
that essentially the
Good
Ottoman
brother,
Empire
how art thou? Is thy whiskey
loss of
going
the war.
down sweetly?
There were
It's
a variety of factors, but mainly led by the British, which is what we go into what you just stated.
Okay.
And they started to kind of create this the mandate of Palestine, the Jordan area, and if I'm not mistaken, I want to be corrected on this, parts of Egypt/Gaza. And I'm not too clear on that part, but from what I recall, those were some of the things that were discussed and also manipulated. Not. There was no innocent player during World War I's kind of like aftermath in my book. Do you agree upon that?
Well, I'm trying to make the connection. I'm affording you the opportunity to make a connection between the people who emigrated to Palestine during the early 1900s and World War I. I think what you're trying to do here is you're trying to establish, I think this is where you're going with this. I think where you're going with this is the 1920 Jerusalem riots, the loss of respect between the British, the Arabs, and the Jews that moved in there. And then we lead up to the Jewish terrorism between the 1920s and 1940s, where they killed people on a regular basis, the Irgun and the other
I don't know
groups.
if I agree to that part of the statement, but yes, fundamentally what I'm saying is, and I'm not going to have the details, I have some details of memory, but I can't recall all of them, that after World War I, the envisioning of the area of Palestine, or the British Mandate of Palestine, the efforts to establish a Jordan kind of area and Gaza, in theory, were all going to take on a life of their own, right? And that was, there was a treaty for a period of time that would allow each of these movements to establish themselves in statehood. One example is Jordan. Jordan actually did accomplish that. And also it was an issue within Turkey, right? But that became a little bit more ugly. Turkey in the end did not want to agree to what it had originally had agreed to. So we don't need to get into too much detail. So I mean, if you know more than I do, that'd be great. I'd love to hear more, but I don't know too many of them. The point I'm trying to make is that there were treaties and agreements as a result of the end of World War I that had intentions on each of these. One of these intentions was the British Mandate on the state of Palestine, where Palestinians and Jews were supposed to create a country. That's what I'm trying to get to.
But the thing is,
and they themselves, and they themselves had fighting, and then the Jewish people within themselves had fighting.
You just want to keep talking, don't you?
If I'm not mistaken, again, I could be wrong.
Yeah, you're keeping talking.
Do you agree with the
The
summary of that statement? We don't have to agree to details. And if not, we can pause and we can investigate this, because I have been doing a little bit of investigation of that, only because of this conversation that has been taking place.
I think what you'll find is that the proportionality of the killings,
I get it.
regardless of who started it, were always disproportionate in favor of the Jews. Going back as far as that Jerusalem riot, where they only killed 5 Jews, but the response and the aftermath resulted in, I don't know, like 300 deaths for the Arabs.
Is this a football match? Like, you need to, I mean, like, when you're attacked, go back to eliminate the threat, whatever that means.
Yeah.
And so it's not about, you killed 5, so we killed 5. No, it's not like that. It's not a score, not a football match.
Yeah. So all that matters is who started it? Is that it? Is that what you're saying, Isa?
Well, what I'm saying is that the morality of the conflict lies on the back of who started first. And then the other side has the right to defend themselves. And sometimes when we're talking, for example, in this case of Israel, they not only have the right to defend themselves, but they have the obligation to defend themselves and defend the people that they represent. So, and yeah, they have to eliminate the threat. One of the ways that you eliminate a threat is through death. It doesn't have to be death. It can be the other side surrendering, but yeah, that's one of the.
It can be by agreement, is what we're saying.
Of the consequences, right? Yeah.
Well, that's what's confusing, right? Isa, you say eliminate the threat. Marvin says through agreement. He started by talking about agreements. The implication there would be that Marvin believes in the power of agreements, he may even think that agreements are preferable to continuous violence. But we have to talk about that too.
I think everyone would prefer agreements. I mean, death is not nice, dude, especially when it's infringe upon someone else, you know? I mean, it's not cool. But, I mean, sometimes the moral thing to do is actually that and go to war because no agreement has been able to be reached. Right? And so when your counterpart is not willing to negotiate, your counterpart only wants to fight, your counterpart has initially agreed on a division of the territory, but then they decided to change their mind and decided to attack instead. I mean, you're not leaving much choice, right?
Can anyone do a quick reset?
Yeah, so Diego and Martin are talking about all the way back to 1914. And how is it that we ended up here and all of this started because Diego said that, or he implied that Gaza felt in the need to attack Israel because they are trapped in an open-air prison. And because we didn't agree on that statement, we went all the way back to 1914, and that's the exercise they're both doing to see if they can agree on the premises.
But no, well, now what's happening is that we're reaching a situation in which if Palestinians or the Palestinian Arabs started the issue, then they may in fact be in an open-air prison, but through their own doing, I think is where she's going with this.
Right. Well, that's part of it. That's the most recent kind of like framing. I was trying to go back to somewhere based upon your desire to want to agree and say, fine, but let's agree that from the beginning of this kind of vision of what Palestine or the state of Palestine might have been, that there has never been an agreement. And there's never been a kind of like, hey, this is what it's going to be and this is how it's going to be governed. And because of that, that still continues to today. We can go into all the details as to why, which we don't have to, but I think you will agree with me, maybe, and maybe you don't. That's why I'm asking the question. From then, from 1914, it has never been established that Palestine or the Palestinian people were able to form a state in the vision of the British Mandate or even in the Palestinian Mandate.
Well, the premise that the people that live in these geographical locations today are responsible or have to bear the burden of their ancestors, to me, is not, that premise is not coherent.
Okay, let's say it differently. Let's say that you're saying that those people that are Palestinian in the region deserve to have something. And you can define whatever the something is.
They deserve all the freedoms that we get to enjoy in the Western world.
Okay, so those freedoms require governance, don't they? Like, the reason why I'm free in the Western world is because I am a citizen of a country that I believe in, and I adhere to the laws and regulations of that country. Would you agree that that's freedom? Or is it something defined in a different way?
Isa can elaborate on you. I don't want to drive this down a rabbit hole. That I do believe in governance. I believe that people can govern themselves through contract, and that our rights are not given to us by the government.
Okay, that I don't understand. Is me being a citizen of the United States give me the right to have freedom? I guess I'm gonna ask it that way.
No.
Okay, then this is where we disagree. Then that's a fundamental disagreement that we can't move past.
Right.
Right. Okay. Well, there it is.
I don't like, for example, I don't think that Palestinians' ability to travel abroad should be restricted by either their own local government or the Zionist government across the border. I think that Palestinians, if a pilot is willing to take them on a plane, they should be welcome to ride that plane. And if that plane is allowed to land on an airport, then that plane should be allowed to land on that airport.
Right.
It's a different.
Plane's allowed to land on an airport.
It's a different.
Right. Yeah, but see, here's the thing, right? I think it's a non-starter. Your vision, which doesn't exist anywhere, is a non-starter. That's the problem, right? Your belief, which is truly a belief, that people don't need governments to be free, it doesn't exist. So, unless you can give me an example of a country where that doesn't have a government and people can do whatever at will. It's a non-starter.
Here's where Diego and I disagree.
It's a non-starter. It's a non-starter
Here's
because
where Diego and I disagree because he's an anarchist, and even though we agree on a lot of economical theory, well, and most of it, and freedom, and kind of like what's known as libertarian, values, he is an anarchist, and he doesn't believe. I mean, he wants zero government, and so but this is the most utopic kind of ideology that I kind of like can identify, because for anarchy to be able to work, you would have to have 100% of your people being 100% virtuous, and be able to trust 100% that all of them are going to be able to self-govern. Therefore, this is never going to happen. People will always do bad things. We cannot be trusted. We're flawed individuals, and you need to have some rules in place and create a framework of work and put some delimitations on what you cannot do. Now, going back to like what Diego is saying about the freedom and why are they restricted in the movement? I mean, like this is very easy, Gaza at this point. I don't know if you already guys were talking about that or talking about a more historic moment, but there is a need for Israel to protect itself. I mean, you have frequently rocket attacks from Gaza into Israel, and this creates a need for Israel to actually apply some necessary security measures, right, in order to maintain the safety of their country. Now, if they were a friendly neighbor and everything was normal and they were not trying to kill Israelis, then yeah, I agree with you. There should be no blockage. But this is a matter of national security, and even so, I mean, like even there being those limitations, like I don't think that Israel is necessarily like keeping them completely apart. Like, as I understand, Gaza chose their government. They have their own governance, set in place, which is they chose for it to be Hamas. They also have got economic activities going on. They have a functioning market economy. They have a trade of goods. They are doing stuff on their own. On top of that, they're getting also humanitarian aid constantly. I understand it's about like 500 or so trucks per day coming in with food and clothes and all of this stuff. And yeah, there is a movement of people, but there is some cross-border security that needs to be regulated, right? Because again, national security. So I really struggle to think of Gaza as an open jail or prison. Like I understand why they're trying to make that claim, because it drives people's emotions, and then you can justify the attacks. But I don't necessarily agree with the description, because it is not like that. A prison doesn't have everything that I told you. Open air prison.
I mean, you get the fundamental problem with not identifying it as that, is that it opens the door for justification of the same type of behavior against another enemy who is determined to be unreasonable. So like one could say in Nazi Germany, the Jews were unreasonable, and therefore Auschwitz wasn't an open air prison. They did it to themselves.
This is completely different. Auschwitz, the people in Auschwitz, they were stripped from all their belongings. They literally couldn't get out of the camps. They were given limited food and limited resources. They were forced to work. That is a prison. You cannot compare Auschwitz with Gaza.
I mean, this is getting getting funny. This is where it becomes polarized because any person who is on the other side of the argument is going to say, "Wow, you just described Gaza."
Oh, really? So they have the gas chambers there in Gaza, and people are put into gas chambers on purpose? Is that what it is? Or maybe
No,
it's
but even leave the gas chambers.
No, it's white
just the
phosphorus is
concept
what
of
they're
it.
choosing to use this time.
What is it? Hold on, what is it?
White
again?
phosphorus.
Okay, so there's no war right now. That Israel is just bombing.
It's not gas
everything,
chambers
right?
with diesel fuel, which
Right.
people
So you're trying to compare gas chambers with the war, like any other country.
No,
Like
he's talking
Germany
about
was-
white. He's talking about white phosphorus. Is there ever
What's that?
used on white? It's basically they use it military to either light up the sky or to mark things. But if you throw it directly on population, it can cause a lot of damage, like chemical damage. Okay, so it's allowed to use if you shoot it to the sky, for example, to illuminate the sky. There are claims that because the IDF is using white phosphorus, they're basically directing it at the population. If so, you will see many cases of face deformations, which we didn't see, but they use this claim. In any case, it didn't happen in Gaza, so I'm not sure what he's talking about. And what Isa was talking, when you go into those to the concentration camp, you have uniform. You don't have your own apartment, and you don't go to the supermarket, and you don't have a spa, and you don't go to the beach. You have a bunk that you sleep with, 12 other people in the same row, with 3 other rows, with nothing. You don't have anything. Okay? So I'm not sure that you can compare this to Gaza, or you don't know. I will give you a Twitter if you would like. Use it in the Twitter.
Actually, you have more because your structures aren't being destroyed. You actually have more at the internment camp.
Okay, listen. I understand. Go to Twitter. I am Shin. Okay, IMSHIN. It's a Twitter account that is basically following many accounts of Gazans from Instagram, from YouTube, from TikTok, and basically uploads what they upload, videos from Gaza. Have a look and tell me if it looks like a concentration camp. And also if you can watch videos, maybe or photos from World War II, and then do a comparison, then you can come back and say that it's the same thing.
Yeah, Auschwitz.
I have a question. Why do you think?
Yeah, the issue with what he's doing is that he gets to paint the picture and be irrelevant in fact. It's like, I don't believe in governments, but yet there was an open election where this government was actually put into power. Diego, you realize that, right? Does anybody in this room think that Hamas wasn't put in power by the Palestinian people?
Yeah, that was, and they still support it.
I'm just curious, does anybody disagree with that fact?
Well, I will just be accurate. They did elect Hamas, but what happened afterwards was not democratic because Hamas executed the Fatah and they didn't have elections since.
No, but
I'm just trying to be fair, and it's not like they...
But no, but the issue is, and this Marvin's being way too generous to some of the... Marvin has been very nice in this conversation, and to the point where it almost annoys me. Because when you talk to somebody that sits there and says they believe people just inherently have rights, and they don't believe in borders or anything like that, you're basically talking to somebody that knows the argument they're about to face. So instead of actually being intellectually honest, they just choose to go the opposite.
But that's okay. That's okay because Philip, here's the bottom line, right? I remember Diego now. I remember his position. I've heard it before, right? It doesn't exist anywhere on the planet. So it's a non-starter. Diego is an uncreditable debater, right? We cannot have debate with him because he has beliefs that don't exist.
You can't even have a conversation. That's the issue. I can.
No, hold on. I think Diego is actually one of the most the smartest people that I have met here in Clubhouse, and I think
Because you're one of the dumbest.
Having a debate. Now, when it comes to this topic, he is really challenging, the current position of Israel. Well, for different reasons.
That's not true, Issa.
Decides to be on the other side,
No,
and so
he's challenging.
Let me explain. So his modus operandi usually is like trying to create arguments that fit his own narrative so that other people can see things differently. But yeah, sometimes it's too far-fetched, I think. But
it's not even that. That may be true, but what's more truer is that he doesn't believe in government. So it's a non-starter conversation.
Yeah, I gotta
distract.
I've been listening. Hold on, Diego.
I would then ask Diego to let's not throw into the pot just all of our bunch of ideas, because then it just gets even more complex. So how about we leave the anarchist philosophy aside, the economical theory aside, and we just focus on, let's say, war.
And that's what I was willing to do. I said, wait a second, why are we moving on
but you
with any
brought
premise?
into the conversation anarchy. It was
No. Only because he asked me a question about do I agree? He was looking for common ground on do I agree in governance? As I said, yes, I don't want to distract the issue, but I believe that governance can be brought about through
but that's the
people
part
agreeing.
That you should have left out, because then that confuses people.
Right.
So the question is then, I know where you're going.
Fine,
it confuses
fine.
people because all of a sudden you're starting to talk about something that it's not the case.
Fine. So then here's the deal. I'm going to win this argument because the government is going to force my ideas over Marvin's, right? Because at the end of the day, Marvin and I can't actually come to an agreement because we're not reasonable people and our rights are given to us by the government.
Diego, you just don't like Jews. That's what it's all about.
No, Republican. No, stop. No, that's not the point I'm trying to make. That's a point that you're bringing up. The point I'm trying to make is that when we talk about what's going on, I'm going to use the word government. And if you and I don't agree upon the use of that word, we're not going to be able to move forward. So until we decide, until you and I agree what the word government means, no.
And I said to you, I agree with government. The only difference between you and me, and I thought it was fair to point it out, because this is why I think you support the bigger terrorist, is because if you believe...
It's like that you support the bigger terrorist. You want a fair conversation, really.
Okay, let me just say...
He's incapable of having a conversation outside the guidelines of praxeology. He's a gaslighter.
Hold on.
The reason that I said that I think it's important is because if you believe that it's justifiable to force someone who has done nothing to you to follow rules that you've determined are best for them, obviously that's going to become a problem. I can agree with the concept of people coming together and agreeing to govern themselves. I personally can't agree with the position that you can tell other people.
This is basically Dumb and Dumber. This is the premise to Dumb and Dumber, the movie, just like your PTR. Oh, that's Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. My bad.
No, I'm wanting to know why.
Oh,
no, he's talking like he's coming off the trail, like, but he's blowing his nose, but he ain't blowing his nose since he come off the trail, like he's from Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah. So stupid. If I wasn't recording these rooms and I was just going in there to listen, I'd be very, very depressed, man. Very sad. It would be very sad. Oh, you called me 25 minutes ago. Where was I? Where have I been?
You're probably sucking dick. I don't know.
Got a little cum in my throat.
You're not a cisgender man.
Yeah, so what did you feel at that moment?
She was sucking the plastic, and I was like,
did you feel a tingling in your strap on?
You say what?
Did you feel a tingling sensation in your strap on?
No, nigga. I'm trying to tell you, y'all motherfuckers is stupid.
with your mental ass.
That's why I say it's a mental illness, a mental disability.
No, it's not. It's really, okay. It's just like foreplay, bro. It's just like foreplay.
She makes it.
Let's just get to the point. Don't try to get me to like essentially justify what you believe in. Just tell me yes. Actually, the United States does the same thing, and that's okay. Okay, well then at least we cut to the chase. Why are you fucking doing foreplay? Why don't you just fuck me
It's
already?
fine when America does it, but it's not fine when Israel does it, right? Because you hate.
Hold up, Rafi. Let me just just calm down. Do you believe that if you were drafted by the United States military to go fight a war, that'd be okay?
Do you really want to know what the foreplay is? Is a combat medic?
Obviously not.
Okay, so you do believe that the United States is a terrorist organization that's forcing you to do that, right?
Yes, I'm trying to tease out your inconsistencies. That's the point. The point is to show you.
But I asked you originally if you thought the United States government was a terrorist organization. You said no.
Because you're asking dishonest questions. You don't want to just go ahead and say, I agree with terrorism when it's my views.
No,
you won't just go ahead and say it.
No, hold on, Pastor. I'm actually being very consistent. What I'm trying to see is if you're consistent in what you're saying. So you're lying now because you don't actually want to have a conversation. When I ask you a conversation,
no, that's what you're doing by asking questions that are dishonest.
I'm actually being consistent.
Well,
You haven't actually asked me questions. I'm asking you questions.
I'm saying,
So when I ask you a question,
No, I did ask you a question. I said, do you think it's okay to force someone else to do something against their will? Okay, so then we can't agree. That's fine. I'll stay quiet. You guys can have your.
Diego, let me ask you a question real fast. Can you name a government in the world that doesn't believe that?
I can't.
Okay.
Yeah, we've already got on this. So therefore, it must be right and moral. Yeah, I get it.
Bro,
So let me ask you a question.
bro,
What is right?
bro,
What is
you
moral?
gotta be the loudest, biggest trick
Well,
that I've ever met.
Doing things for which you have the best claim for dominion
You're trying to
would
be
be
loud.
moral, and doing that.
Who decides what's best?
You're being loud to make people
Well, it would be
die.
based on reason and evidence, wouldn't it?
You're
own
loud.
reason? You own value. You own reason. You have
No, I would test my theory against
Oh, so how would you
objective reality.
how would you test your theory?
Are you for real, dude?
Philip, where are you trying
What's
to
the deal?
go?
You just agreed. You agreed that you agree with violence against others that have done nothing to
now
you.
you're
What?
gaslighting. I never said violence against others. You asked a very specific question. I never said violence against others.
What do you mean? That's
asked
what
a very specific
forcing someone to do something is violent. That's what it is.
It
It's
is.
aggression.
So
Yes, it's aggression.
Hold on, Beth.
That's what it
Hold
is.
on, Diego.
Beth.
Philip, you ask Diego who gets to decide what is best for you. Can you answer the question, please?
Yeah, at the end of the day, there is something called objective reality, which is the world we live in, the world we've always lived in.
Yeah,
And
but
at the
who
end of the
gets
day,
to decide?
Usually it's not governance. You come in together with the ability of governance to actually recognize what those higher values are. There's never been an example in this world that doesn't. And by the way, governance will have different values and different ways you constitute what the values actually mean.
Right.
And this is seen throughout the world. And I live in a reality world.
I haven't drank liquor in a long time.
America has different values.
I'm drinking
That is on a country level.
right now.
What about what
I
about
know Edmund knows
like the
that
level of
that's
the room?
rare
Like
for me.
who knows best
But
what
may
is
I
best
talk
for
to
you,
my
Philip?
lady?
This is where I, very much an American, believe that you have certain inalienable rights that come to you. But in those inalienable rights doesn't mean you don't have the actual responsibility that's bestowed upon you. And this is where Diego will lose his mind, because when I ask him a question like, do you believe the United States is a terrorist organization? He says no. Just to come back to say yes means that I can actually be consistent in my thought process, understand.
I said no to because that forced you to get to your point, which is that you want to show that the United States is a terrorist organization, which I would agree with you on, and therefore, by implicitly, you're agreeing that Israel's a terrorist organization. And so when you attack me on saying that Israel's the bigger terrorist, you're being inconsistent and dishonest. That's the point.
I wasn't. My whole point to you is that
that
you
went really far, really quick.
You change the meanings and definitions, and when you have an honest conversation, when somebody asks you a question that goes against exactly the argument you're going against, you lie. So you're now using the fact that you can't even be an honest interloper because you'll lie in conversations to make points that aren't relevant.
I think you're striking out at me while you cry in pain. I think that's what's happening here.
I'm not in pain at all, but if you want to make personal attacks and gaslight, that seems to be your ammo. I mean, like, that's cool. I mean, that's what you have. If you don't actually have logic, like you say, logic, and you can't actually make a reasonable argument, then it would look like you're just struggling.
You did the same thing. When I said, who's the bigger terrorist, that was offensive to your sensibilities. And then you admitted that that's exactly how you think.
Actually, it wasn't offensive. You sat there in the beginning of the conversation and said that you didn't want to actually go down that road. And when Marvin was talking to you, the reason I called you out is because you don't actually want to have a conversation when you actually agree on fact. You throw those little hyperboles out there or those little bumpers to remarks because you actually don't want to have a real conversation. If you wanted to have a real conversation, you wouldn't gaslight. That's the exact reason I went down this road, is because you at the end of the day don't actually believe what you're saying. In fact, you've proven that you don't actually believe what you're saying when I ask you a simple question about your own ideology. So when you can be consistent and when you actually believe what you're saying, it would be worth having a conversation with you. But as far as Isa goes, saying that you're one of the smartest people on Clubhouse, it would appear to me that you don't even know what you believe.
Diego, are you
Bravo.
an anarchist? By the way.
I am. You know, I don't agree with Philip that he has the right to tell other people what to do if they haven't done anything to him, if they haven't aggressed on him in any way. I don't believe in this concept that one can initiate force against others. And that's the non-aggression principle. I live by that principle.
Initiate force. So you're going down a road I haven't gone down yet. If you want to have a conversation, we can have a conversation about this. But you may not believe it.
I'm about to smoke a whole bunch of weed.
I'm retired.
About it?
You're retired. And what did you do?
You want to talk about me smoking weed?
I made a lot of money.
He sounds like he's 20, so he's already retired.
I mean, what do you want me?
Let's talk about me smoking weed. Fuck you, bitches.
It's fucking beautiful.
Wish some motherfucker would.
Wish a motherfucker would. Wish a motherfucker would.
These cornbread fucking hash brown don't even know how to fucking, cut a pig apart, make bacon, like looking my ass motherfuckers. Like, man, I'm tired of these bitches.
Bitch ass
Like,
motherfuckers.
Like seriously. Do you know how to cut a pig apart and make bacon? I do.
I give you Kima.
We will all take his dirty stuff on our floors. Sorry, they gave away a lot about me.
I'm sorry, my lady. What did you say?
Now I'm trying to think if I'm going to go to the Outback for lunch or if I'm going to go through McDonald's instead. Do I go to the Outback and text Rowan, I'm at the Outback, come meet me? We live in the same name town, which is hilarious. We tell people that all the time. We're like, we do not live in the same country, but we live in the same town. Yeah. Melbourne.
I please pick Outback over McDonald's.
I'm scared of her.
Okay, I'll take your advice.
I'm so scared of her.
I wish somebody fucking would. Wish a motherfucker would. Wish a motherfucker would.
Akima, you missed all of it. Whenever Bryn had everybody, when I came in, they were all talking about if they could, like, transfuse alcohol into women's breast so you could, like a dispenser.
Wish a motherfucker would. I wish a motherfucker would.
Bruh, I wish a motherfucker would.
I wish a motherfucker would. Motherfucker. Wish a motherfucker would. Wish a motherfucker would. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hello? What I'm saying is to her, she's actually not incorrect.
Wish a motherfucker would.
I've been that motherfucker that wish a motherfucker would.
Wish a motherfucker would.
That motherfucker that wish the motherfucker would. Like, I'm a combat medic. I was U.S. Army. I'm that motherfucking asshole fucking guy. Dude, hello?
Kitover is something right.
Hello?
In Hebrews 10, verse 7,
Hello?
you know and I know that the stuff.
It's like, how do you have a civil society?
Philip, why do you want to derail the conversation? Why? Why do you insist on going against what we're talking about?
Well, what are we talking about right now? I mean, we're talking
Well, right now, obviously, we were talking about terrorism, and we were defining it, and we were having a discussion about it. Why are you choosing to change the topic?
Well, I'm just wondering if he considers taxes terrorism.
I know. I would say the threat of taxation is terrorism. Taxation is theft.
So do you think that going to 7-Eleven and stealing a candy bar and running from the cops, is that terrorism?
No, the stealing a candy bar is theft.
Okay,
Threatening
not
to
paying
steal a
taxes.
candy bar for political ends would be terrorism. That's my
Wish a
definition.
motherfucker
I think most
would.
people would agree that terrorism
No, they wouldn't.
is the threat of violence or the instilling of violence for political ends. Does anybody disagree with this definition?
Then let's define it as an illegitimate force to get to some sort of objectives, political objectives. And usually it involves using civilians to terrorize the community in order to, I don't know how to say this, blackmail or whatever the political forces or the governments. That is terrorism.
I think your definition is better than Marvin's.
Yeah,
Why does it? So it's civilians, not military. Is that it? It becomes legitimate when you have an army.
Marvin, Marvin, the reason I wanted to ask that question was exactly this: is that there isn't a clear, you can't have a clear, concise conversation because the idea, the way that we see the world is so different on ideologies that I don't know how you would actually have.
Well, this goes back, right? This goes back to what I was saying about government, right? And all these things fall under government, right? Paying your taxes is government. Getting caught by the cops from stealing the candy bar, that's a government. Going to war when you get a letter, that's government. And he doesn't believe in these things.
Yes,
so that's.
But you're saying government, by the virtue of it being government, it's legitimate. Is that the point? Is that where you're really going with this?
Well, the government legitimizes these things.
Hold on,
okay,
Marvin. This is
it's
why
not. This is not.
Sorry.
Okay, so Hamas is a government, so therefore it's legitimate. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Just give me a second there, Diego. Go back to your rant. Marvin, this is actually why I think you're right on when you said
I'm trying really hard to be
has to stop here, and then people are like, well, I don't really understand. This is exactly right. There's no way to have a conversation with somebody that doesn't actually have a simple idea of what the real road looks like. And when you ask him a question of give me an example so I can look at this, that he says I don't have one, we're literally having a conversation that lives in fantasy world because we can't agree on which one is.
You won't answer my questions about what makes something legitimate. It sounds like you're saying by the virtue of it being a government, in which case
I know this is weird.
Hamas is legitimate then. That would have to be the conclusion.
Listen, Diego, I wasn't trying to sit there and restart that conversation with you. I was really just trying to tell Marvin that, and I said, I think at the same time, I mean, Marvin's right on. There's no conversation to be had here.
Well, Philip, but that's not up to you to decide. Marvin and Diego are voluntarily, Marvin and Diego are voluntarily engaging in a conversation. The fact that you don't like how it's going, it's another question. But right now, they are trying to get into an exchange of ideas, and that's what is being interrupted in this moment.
Well, okay, look, but I've already, he was pointing out what I said, and I still stand where I'm at. It's a non-starter to have a conversation further than defining government for Diego. For Diego. And so until we define government and the characteristics.
But he's acting one legitimizes something. I'm saying the government.
I think the question is are there situations in which violence is legitimate? That's a fair question. Okay, but one could not conclude that by the virtue of being an official government, that would be the standard by which we call a thing legitimate or not. That's ridiculous, because then I'd have to conclude that Hamas is legitimate, and you guys don't agree with that.
No, Hamas.
It would have to be your own position.
We agree that Hamas is legitimate. No one's debating that.
Oh, okay, all right.
But it's a terrorist organization. That's what we agree upon. It has a body, and that body resembles a terrorist cell, right? And it governs through terror. Example, it hides hostages amongst the population. Example, it allows the killing of their own population by themselves. Example, it holds and creates infrastructures of clandestine activity and movement of money. These are all characteristics of terrorist cell-type organizations.
May I comment? Diego, please.
Me too. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Please.
Well, first of all, there is no one definition for terrorism agreed by all. Each country has its own definition. But at the same time, we can agree that terrorism includes specific things, just like big harm or violence. That violence could necessarily be included because at the same time, cyber crimes could be considered as terrorism. So violence could be agreed or disagreed. But of course, it is against civilians, innocent people. Marvin already described Hamas as terrorist. Okay, it's his opinion. But others see Hamas as resistance. And he mentioned some examples of Hamas and what they do or what they are having now. So this is in his point of view, respectively, of course, it's terrorism. But at the same time, Israel is doing the same against civilians. Israel already arrested more than 9,000 people since the 7th of October till now without any court, without any judgment. This is a terrorism. They also used their weapons against civilians, innocent people. This is
it is war, though. Isn't there a war on their POWs?
I cannot say it is a war because war, based on the military definitions, and you are a military guy, is between two regular armies. After all, Hamas is just a militias. And at the same time, people whom are in the ground, in the field, whom are in the
Let's slow you down a little bit. Let's slow you down a little bit here. Like the declaration of war that was very clear a few days after October 7th. Do you recognize that declaration of war and its desired measurable objectives?
Based on the Israeli perspective and the Israeli authorities?
Based on October 7th.
Well, no, look, Benjamin Netanyahu declared war. He actually gave a public hearing saying, look, these are the things that we need to achieve. And in order to achieve them, we are going to come in by force unless you surrender. That is that's a standard declaration of war. We've seen it done many times over the centuries. Do you recognize that declaration of war? Do you recognize that?
It doesn't mean, I recognize it, of course, but I don't agree with it.
Okay, what don't you agree about that declaration? Please.
Let me tell you why. I really respect having conversation with you, Marvin. We already talked about that before. But let me tell you my point of view in that case. Netanyahu, when he said, I always see Israel overreacting, always they overreact and always say this is against the threat of our existence. They always overreact. But at the same time, they are, after all, malicious. If he wants to have a problem, if he has a problem with Hamas, let him go and fight Hamas. Why he keeps involving innocent civilians in this war? It is just like I'm having a problem with you, Marvin, and I cannot get you, so I go to your neighbors and rock them with rocks.
Is
What
that
is
logical?
that's like
One
regular
second.
civilians.
Who is the one involving civilians, Egyptian?
Israel, of course.
No.
Sorry, Daniel.
You're making it
Let's
sound
be honest.
Egyptian.
I'm honest, you know that.
You're
Angelia.
making it sound like Israel is saying, hey, how many civilians are we going to kill today? Oh, let's go for 500. It's not what's happening. The territory of Gaza has got hostages. That's number one. The ones involving civilians in all of this is Hamas. They're legitimate, as you called it before, legitimate government, right? So they are the ones hiding the hostages in civilian crowded places, and not only that, but putting them in the houses of civilians. So they're using them as human shields. Why? Because Israel, they know that Israel tries to be surgery, whatever.
Surgical.
Yeah, thank you. In their actions. So Israel doesn't want to go for the women and the little children, all these nice people, but they're obliging them to go for them, because in the places where they're putting the hostages and where they're putting the weapons are with the civilians. So it's very different when you want to go on purpose to kill the little children and little women, or you have to go through there because they're making you go to these places and they become casualties. Plus, it's the middle of a war. Unfortunately, there are casualties in a war. It's not like everything is peaceful and all of a sudden Israel goes and it's like, oh yeah, let's play today at killing children. You know, let's see how many you can kill and let's see how many I can kill. That would be terrorism, which is what Gazians have done. And Israel is
Can I ask him a question? What is going to be not overreacting, in your opinion, by Israel?
I already said that before. Rima, if I pronounce your name correctly. Isa, here I'm coming, my lady. Rima, Isa, I already said and commented on what the IDF says about itself. It prizes itself, and I only saw who prizes itself is just Satan. So they are doing the same and say we are the most moral army, we are the most professional army, and they kill over 30,000. Is that professionalism?
It could be.
I totally agree with you.
It could be 30,000.
Is Hamas?
Let me continue. Daniel,
I wanted to be honest before, and you know,
Hold on, G.
I asked you before, like you said, like why is the IDF involving civilians? And I asked you who is involving civilians, and you know the evidence is so clear. I mean, they are not using uniform, they are using hospitals and mosques and schools. And they are firing from Rafah and from populated areas. There are so many like evidence of this that they are using the population. And I ask you to like, we need to understand this in order to deal with this. And who is the one that is involving the civilians? Who is putting them? Who put the hostages in the middle of Nusayrat camp in a family on the 3rd floor? Who put them there?
Okay, first of all, 3 things I would like to say. First, you cannot really separate between civilians. It is harder for you to separate between civilians and Hamas. Let me tell you, the infrastructure of all Gaza is full of tunnels. Simply, the tunnels is over 200 kilometers, twisted and rounded under Gaza, which means that it is under every building almost. Under every hospital, under every office, under every school, under everything.
Yes, exactly.
Hold on, please. Let me continue.
Who put their
but we all agree. We all know this. We
know this very well. Then why the hell Israel always concentrates only on schools and hospitals? Because they want a disaster and genocide for Palestinians.
No, that is not true.
Obviously true.
Egyptian.
What about the other? Hold on, please.
I will give you evidence.
Daniel,
I will show you.
I cannot talk with this interruption.
Listen, people on mute.
I cannot talk with this interruption, Smalls.
people unmuting randomly, it just creates noise because we cannot even listen what you're saying anyways. So please don't unmute, and then I don't know, let's do a raising hand dynamic, Daniel, if you want, so that we know who wants to talk.
Yeah, we'll do
and
raising
then
hands.
we can go like that. Yeah.
So,
Egyptian, finish
So
your.
after Egyptian, Yaakov.
thank you. After all, we agree that we disagree, okay? And this is not the first time we have conversation, of course. Again, the tunnels are over 200 kilometers long. They are twisted. And I see that when Israel hits by its rockets only hospitals and schools because they intentionally wanted to harm the Palestinians. If you really say that Hamas are taking civilians as human shield, okay, maybe as a proof, the 4 hostages had been in civilians' houses. But do you want to tell me that the over 2 million people in Gaza, they are all involved? I don't think so. At the same time, one of the official spokesmen of Israel, he was with that British guy, I don't remember his name, and he mentioned by this number over 14,000 of Hamas members could be killed by the IDF. He told him, the interviewer, what about the civilians? How many are they? And he refused to tell the numbers, or he said, I don't know. How could he know the numbers of the Hamas members whom had been killed by the IDF, and he cannot really tell the real casualties numbers?
Because they lie.
Who is lying? He's a spokesman of Israel. He's a official man. It is in the internet. Who's lying?
Is that supposed to
I'm not talking about Palestinians.
Hold on. Let
I'm talking
Egyptian
about
and
the
then Yaakov.
spokesman. The Israeli spokesman. It was an official position. So he's speaking with official tongue of the Israeli government.
No, because it's lies.
Guys, let him finish.
Okay, let's say it is a lie. Let's say it is a lie. What about Biden when he said it in the Congress?
Okay, so
Do you want to tell me that he depends on the Ministry of Health?
Hold on. One second. Egyptian, one second. Hold on, everybody. Egyptian, you cannot make gazillion points because then people cannot sit and write it down. So make a point or stay on one topic because you jumped from we started about who is involving civilians and you got very, very far with the estimates of who's killing, and I can touch on any of them and I'm sure that other people can do. But try to let's try not to go too wide, okay?
I just want to say something really quick to Egyptian because he made a point, and I just want to say something really quick if possible.
Can I finish my
30 seconds? Hold on, Egyptian. I think that we're going to stick to the point of the civilians. You already said your opinion.
Yeah, that's
Egyptian.
the one I want to go for the civilians.
Can we stick to the raising hands?
Okay, 30 seconds, Rafi.
Yeah.
Yaakov is going to go first. And then you, Rafi, and then Andre.
Thank you.
Okay. There are a lot of points that Egyptian made. I really want to focus on one because the repetition of the word genocide is just, every time we use it, it dilutes the value of it, and it's very important. The current definition, defined in 1949 by the UN, is the intentional targeting of civilians. That means there's a group of people in A, and you say, we are going to kill people in A. It does not mean there is an army, there's an irregular militia, i.e. people without uniforms, inside and around the population. If you target those people, whether they are in tunnels or whether they are in hospitals, and it causes collateral damage amongst the civilians, that is not genocide. That is war. End of point.
Thank you, Yaakov. Is my mic okay?
Which Israel does intentionally, Yaakov.
Okay,
No, they do not. They do not target civilians. They target
so
Hamas.
we'll touch on this point now. Yeah,
I know, but I just don't want to stop using the word genocide. These are war casualties.
I understand. I think that Egyptian still is not convinced that we are not targeting civilians. This is I think where we are now.
May I share you?
He actually think that we are targeting, but I actually wanted to comment.
Hold on, because Raf is going to go first. But Yaakov, I understand where you're coming from. I don't agree either that it's a genocide, but we cannot police either the speech of others, and this is one of the tools that they have in order to justify their point, even if it's not true.
I agree. It's just it requires us on the other side to make sure that people understand the definition, because I think people are throwing around words, and there's this big lie. When you say something often enough, it becomes true. And we have to repeat often enough that genocide is the intentional targeting of civilians, not casualties of war. It's terrible.
100%.
Every single person that dies in this war, on Israel's side or in the Palestinian side, is terrible. Civilians, I'm talking about, is terrible. We have a saying in the Jewish religion: save one person, you save the world. Kill one person, you kill the world. That is so important. What?
So if we are on the topic of being important, it's also to say uninvolved civilians, because we saw with Noor Gamani that she was taken by civilians, she was kept by civilians, and so we need to say uninvolved civilians. The fact that someone is a civilian, even someone that is a watcher, that is like, someone that is watching and on the lookout and then tells if someone is coming, is also not uninvolved. Is like he's uninvolved. Exactly. Okay.
As an accomplice.
Yeah, exactly. But if you want to say civilians, so we need to say uninvolved civilians if you want to say that they are completely innocent.
Right. There are three types of people. There are people who take up arms. There are people who are complicit in helping the people take up arms, but may not have arms with them. And then there are people who do not want to take up arms and are not helping the people who are armed. So those are the three types. Unfortunately, type 2 and type 3 in the three categories are getting killed because of the population density, 14,000 people per square kilometer, one of the densest places that urban warfare has taken place, and it's difficult. So, end of rant. It's very hard to target civilians when you got this amount of people in the tunnels that Egyptian said.
Okay.
I'll just say that all the people that are concerned about genocide were very silent when what was going on in Tigray was going on.
I'd like to say, Yaakov, how are you first? It's good to see you. But I'm sorry, I disagree with you for so many things.
I really appreciate the quality of debate with you.
I really appreciate
it. We can differ, and where we're differing, politely differing. I hope over time, I learned something from you, and you learned something from me. I don't know if we'll ever see eye to eye, but I'm trying.
I really appreciate it.
I like Egyptian. All right, so Rafi,
but I need to comment. I need to comment, and I will go because it's fair time.
You made your point. Let the people answer your point, please.
I didn't make my point. I keep interrupting.
You made your point before Yaakov answered. You cannot. Hold on, Andre. You cannot be answering to every person.
No, it's not answering. It's commenting on what you said. Okay, no problem. If you wanted to continue the role, no problem.
We need to go quickly,
but I need to have the chance.
Come back again after Andre. So go ahead, Rafi, and then Andre.
I will be after Andre.
Yeah, not under Andre, please. Egyptian, you said that there's 30,000 casualties in in Gaza right now. So let me ask you a question. In every nation, there's at least 10% of the nation has patriots to their country. When you have a population of 2 million, and there is about 10% that are going to stand with Hamas, that's still 200,000 people that are protecting Hamas. They're going to stand in the way in civilian clothes when a military comes in to do its operation. And they're going to disguise within those people. So you cannot count as they're being civilians. And as I think Marvin or Daniel said, they don't have uniforms. They're dressed as regular people. They're dressed as me and you. So I don't know if you have a gun. You don't know if I have a gun. Okay, so this becomes very dangerous. They're willing to go fight and stand for their country. And not only that, they get indoctrinated at an early age with their education, with the people that run their country. They already indoctrinated them from an early age. They brainwash them that this is normal. It's normal to stand in front of a gun. It's normal the Hamas warrior, whatever you're gonna call them, and that's why
Oh, they got him.
They absolutely want nothing.
We lost you, Rafi, for a minute.
Pardon? Oh, sorry.
We lost you for like 20 seconds.
No, I heard him the whole time.
Oh, okay. Oh.
Likewise.
Oh,
sorry. Yeah, so the people that don't want nothing part of the war, Hamas still puts in front of them to protect Hamas. So the casualties are absolutely nothing. Forget about the casualties. Casualties happened in Germany. Doesn't mean that Germany was right in World War II.
Oh, thanks, Rafi. Andre. Andre?
Hey, did Rafi finish?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. So
it actually worked that you shouted.
Louder. No, so here's a couple of things that they get rehashed. To Yakov's point, it's one of those things when it gets repeated enough times, people think that it becomes true. So a couple of things. Number one, there was a challenge made about Israeli army and the way they handling the conflict in terms of civilian deaths. Even by the numbers that are provided by the Palestinian sides, which are should go under huge scrutiny because they've been lying and staging deaths. There's documented basically Bollywood type of productions when they put out videos of people who are perfectly fine and seconds later they just get up and walk off. So there's a questionable data coming from their Ministry of Health. But even using their numbers, I think in terms of proportion of civilian deaths to combatants, it's 1-to-1, which is fairly unheard of, especially in the modern combat in the statistics. And the second thing, so like the challenge that says, if you position yourself as one of the best, most humane armies, how come you killed so many people? Well, I mean, it's the proportions that we're talking about, and this is why IDF is, hailed as one of the most humane armies that handling this conflict in the best way possible. And second thing that I keep hearing, it's the same thing over and over, and it gets explained, and then the next day it gets rehashed again. Well, what about the Minister of Defense, I think, who came out, or an official who knew exactly how many militants were killed, but couldn't tell you the number of civilians? That and the challenge is made that it's impossible. If one is true, then the other has to be true. That is a non sequitur. One does not follow the other. In fact, it makes absolute logical sense that if you are going after militants, people with guns, and you eliminate them, you know exactly how many people with guns you eliminated. You do not know what the other type of casualties are going to be. So that challenge needs to go away. It makes no sense, and it doesn't follow logic.
I would like to make a comment just on the count. Egyptian. You were saying, well, yeah, but it's been 30,000 people. Well, think about this. It could be more than 30,000 people if this is not stopped. And I believe that there's a way to stop this, right? If the Gazans really, or Hamas actually, not the Gazans, because I don't think that Gazans have too much of a say on this, because it's really Hamas running all the show. But if Hamas really cared about the Palestinians and they decided to give back all the hostages and surrender and just give up on their weapons, I think that there would be a ceasefire. Now, I was comparing this yesterday with, when people go to a casino, and so you go to a casino, you lose $10,000, you lose $20,000, and they're like, oh my God, I need to keep playing so that I can get that money back. 2 hours later, you lost your home, your car, and probably your wife as well. So the question is, at what point do you decide that your losses are enough and that you should retire so that you don't keep losing more in the effort of getting back what you've lost? And now, instead of dollars, let's talk about lives in Gaza, right? Like, okay, you've lost 30,000, but if you keep playing and if you keep going ahead, the price can be way more. So how about you just walk away with your losses and you say, okay, this is enough. I don't want to risk one more life more. Like, so Hamas and the Palestinian supporters, I mean, instead of actually saying, guys, surrender so that the fire can be stopped, it seems like they're encouraging the people to keep risking their lives and be confronted by a power that is obviously stronger than them. I mean, Palestinians are not going to win this. So how about you just stop, save the people that you have still alive, and then try to work an agreement. But the first thing, in order to stop, I think that they need to give back the hostages, because there is not going to be any negotiation possible or any conversation possible if Israel doesn't have their people back.
Well, that's actually their strategy. Just quickly, like the Hamas leader said that civilian death toll could benefit the militant group in Gaza. And that's from the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah, that was
yeah, but that's important, right? Like, that is their strategy, and to play into an opponent's strategy is stupid.
Like, basically, I'm giving it to you in a second, Egyptian, just to comment to what Isa said.
Okay.
Because you want to comment to the others. We talked about it the other day about the same example, and now that I'm thinking, and also this is what kind of Kyle said, that you said that they are losing, but are they, or is it winning? Basically, Hamas knows that they cannot win Israel with military force, but they can ruin our reputation and our name. So when there are more deaths of Palestinians, is it good for Hamas or bad for Hamas? Is it bad for Israel? Like, the incentive of Israel, and we can see, is to have as little as possible of casualties, of civilian casualties. Not the other way around. It's the Hamas interest. And people need to start realizing this fact. They don't think like us. What we consider winning life, they consider losing. That is the point.
Well, then, strategically, I mean, it's beneficial for them to put the hostages in civilian places. I mean, it's let's say they look at it as an investment, So, well, I mean, then they don't really care. Let's stop talking about casualties then. Go ahead, Abjit.
Thank you so much. Too many points, and thank God I got my pencil and paper.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, not to lose anything. Anyways, I'll try to be brief. Sorry?
I also have one sometimes.
Okay, that's really good. Okay. But at the same time, I really have to go for prayer times, so I would just say my comments respectively, of course. And please don't interrupt me. I will start with Isa and what she said. I told you before, Isa, it is really one of the dumbest thing to fight someone. I'm not talking about you personally. I'm talking in general. One of the dumbest thing is to have a fight or a disagreement or whatever you call it with someone who has nothing to lose. So imagine that Hamas have nothing to lose, and at the same time, based on their ideology, sacrificing by their lives is desirable thing. So what do you expect from them? Someone who has nothing to lose and his life is nothing comparing to his ideology, and he is ready to sacrifice by his life. And at the same time, you say it can be stopped by giving back the hostages. But at the same time, Israel doesn't want to give any guarantees to stop this war even after they get their hostages back. I don't defend Hamas. I never defended Hamas. And if I say that they are considered as how can I say it? Say they fight for right or something, this is based on others' points of views, not me. If I say I condemn Hamas, does that change anything? If I say fuck Hamas, does that mean that they are gone now? If I say hallelujah Hamas, did that change anything? Nothing. So my opinion is not really...
So go ahead and just denounce Hamas then, motherfucker.
Okay, anyway, back to the polite people here who give me the space, which I really
So
appreciate.
just go ahead
I
and
don't
denounce
defend
Hamas,
Hamas, but at the same time,
motherfucker.
this is their ideology. This is how you must deal with them, even if you don't agree with them. About Yaakov, and I respect having his conversation.
So just denounce
I would
Hamas,
like to tell you how Egypt fought terrorism. And terrorism in Sinai is very difficult because of the situation there, full of mountains, caves, and all the things, and they took civilians as shield. But at the same time, it took years, about 5-6 years. And we worked with the intelligence, the Egyptian intelligence. We did our best in order to fight the terrorists there without any casualties of civilians. This is what Israel should do. And about the casualties, you say that it could be more. Then what about the professionalism of the IDF? And if you are talking about the numbers of this 30,000 in 9 months, this is a huge number. And if you say that it's coming from the Palestinian Authority, I don't think that Biden, when he said 30,000, he took this number from the Palestinian authorities. He is the president of the most powerful development country. So he has his agencies, of course, to get the real number. And comparing to what happened in Russia, Russia and Ukraine are two regular armies. However, in 2 years, in real war, the casualties of civilians are much less than 30,000 in 9 months. So that is not fair. And if you are talking about genocide, yes, let me finish, please. Let me finish. Hold on.
Guys, don't interrupt him, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Daniel. Again, it is a genocide. Aiming hospitals is a genocide. And there is no even one single good conditioned hospital in Gaza right now. Aiming schools is a genocide. Doing intentionally things to provide helps and aids for the civilians is a genocide, even if they allow very few trucks, but these trucks are not enough at all. And if they allow, not to be blamed. But in fact, the numbers of trucks that come daily are not enough at all based on the desires of disasters that we have that in Gaza. Fighting terrorism is one of the most horrible, difficult wars or fights in humankind. So it is really hard and it's very difficult to have a fight or war against terrorism. Guns, if they are in Hamas, and every children, at the same time, every single person, male or female in Israel, joins the army. 3 years for males, 2 years for females. And Netanyahu, also El Sinwar, are considered as war criminals. And this is by people whom are specialized in studying and working with law. They are more familiar with law and legal things.
You will not denounce Hamas because you are Muslim Brotherhood.
Anyway, thanks for giving me the chance, Daniel.
Okay, we're going to denounce Hamas for 24 hours, 7 days a week from now on.
Is the threat of violence or the instilling of violence for political ends? Does anybody disagree with this definition?
Let's define it as an illegitimate force to get to some sort of objectives, political objectives. And usually it involves using civilians to terrorize the community in order to I don't know how to say this, blackmail or whatever the political forces or the governments. That is terrorism.
think your definition is better than Marvin's.
I didn't mean that, Marvin. The reason I wanted to ask that question was exactly this: is that there isn't a clear, you can't have a clear, concise conversation.
How do you do that?
But you're missing one part.
Marvin, it is a very big thing to talk, but let's say that the United States already declared now by Blinken, the Secretary of State, that there must be no future for Hamas as militias, maybe as political party, maybe. And I told you, and I told Isa that it is going to be finishing Hamas, it's going to be short-term solution. I must tell you that if Israel really wants peace and security, it is for them and it's for the best to declare or give the right to the Palestinians to have their own states. In that time, and in that time only, there will be no need for Hamas in order to struggle or order to make any violence.
And what is and what is the two-state? What are the borders? What are the borders of a two-state?
Negotiable.
Okay, give me an example. Give me some concept.
It's gonna be a very big discussion, Marvin. Maybe we can talk about this later.
Well, okay, so
Come later.
One of the suggestions.
Okay.
Thank you, and this fair time. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just to correct about you can listen or but just for the room. The number of trucks that are coming in every day is, I think, from the last few days I saw around between 150 to 200. And right now on the Gaza side of the crossing, there are like 1,000 trucks that are waiting to be unloaded by the UN. So there is no problem of aid coming in. Actually, there's more coming in now than before the war.
Marvin, Marvin, I appreciate the simplicity. I think the simplicity is missing one element of simplicity, which is, the hostage is back, but after the war, Hamas's leaders have said there'll be October 7th, there'll be October 8th, there'll be October 9th. This is a literal quote. There'll be 1,000 of them until we drive them into the sea. So the second condition has to be removal of the existential threat, which is, okay, we'll become a political party, and we agree that you can exist. Like, that's the first step. Then you negotiate the borders. If that makes any sense, I don't know. I'm not. It's easy to say as an armchair politician, armchair judge.
Of course it is. Yeah. Look. I mean, the sad part about it is this war is not going to end. Meaning, it's not going to end in a ceasefire. It's not going to end in an agreement. It's not. I'm what do people say on Clubhouse? I'll stand on my square. 10 toes what? Something or other.
10 toes down.
10 toes down, thank you. I love that term. I mean,
it's a new one for me. I've never heard.
Oh, really? It's really, really cute. I think it's cute. 10 toes down. I'm on my, I'm on my square.
Chris Brown has a song with that title.
Oh, really?
Something like that.
Faggots love talking about putting the 10 toes in the soil.
Yes, this is Nora, the Palestinian.
I'm not looking at my phone, but why was she qualified?
I have two accounts, Marvin. I'm on a account called Zesia.
Okay. I don't know why they did that. Anyway, I'm not looking at I can't see my phone.
Yeah, no problem, Marvin.
So, it's just sad. When this conversation started a few hours ago with going back to World War I, which is when I believe the modern version of what's going on now started. I believe that the British had malintent, and moreover, I would say to you that the disagreements between the British, the French, and
what malintent?
Marvin, brother, since you're talking about, I kind of jumped in. I've been not really listening this entire time, so I just kind of jumped in the last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
In and out. Can I place something for you that it's my words. It's not my words. It's my voice. But it's about the subject that you're talking about. It's like 2 minutes, like food.
Oh, God. Like World War I, or is it? Yeah. I mean, of course you can. But I'm just give us the context. Is it World War I or is it modern?
No. It's about Palestine.
Okay. All right. Sure. Yeah. Go for it.
1 second. I put on music mode. This time I'm gonna do it Isa, not like that.
Okay, yeah, because you left us waiting. Oh, now it's working.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay, see if it works.
Who did that?
No, it froze. It's because Israel's in my phone right now, so they don't want it to play.
Oh, come on. Oh, come on.
I swear it's loading. It won't play.
Did you click on that link I sent you?
Marvin, what ill intent do you think the British had? Why she's queuing the? Yeah.
So there were conversations with the Arab countries or Arab leaders actually at that time about certain understandings that would occur if the Arabs assisted in the war with the Ottomans, and those never surfaced to be true.
The Haganah also had malintent.
No, they wanted Jewish refugees to come from Europe that were being blocked by the Arabs and the British. That's why they did what they did.
Wait, so therefore blow up a hotel?
I'm just telling you why they did what they did.
Blow up
wait.
military installation. The hotel was occupied by British officers.
Can you hear it now?
Yeah, we can't hear it. We can hear you, but we can't hear it.
Okay, I just had to come. This room is shadow.
What?
It's okay. We like shadow.
Palestine has a long and vast history, first documented in ancient Egyptian tablets as Peleset over 3,000 years ago. The region between the Mediterranean and Jordan River has come to mean
Just a little bit.
Throughout the ages, Palestine has been home to dozens of cultures, kingdoms, and empires, from Assyrian and Nabatean to Persian and Roman, and many others, each influencing as well as being influenced by the rich cultural and civilizational melange that define the area. These ancient influences can still be felt today in the idioms, vocabulary, and toponymy used by its native Palestinian population. Even Palestinian agricultural practices can be traced back to the Natufians, one of the peoples credited with inventing agriculture, who called Palestine in the Fertile Crescent their home as far back as 9000 BC. Before we continue, it is important to stress that when we talk about Palestine, we are not talking about a Palestinian nation state. For the vast majority of history, the concept of a nation state did not exist. Today, the nation state is so ubiquitous that many have come to internalize it as natural. This is not the case, and we should be especially wary of imposing our modern conceptions on a context where they would be nonsensical. For example, the impulse to imagine our ancestors as some closed-off, well-defined, unchanging, homogeneous group having exclusive ownership of our territory that somehow corresponds to modern-day borders has no basis in history. Unfortunately, this is the foundational myth of many reactionary ethno-nationalist ideologies.
Let's hear
As
about
elsewhere,
normal give history, man.
over the millennia, kingdoms rose and fell.
Why are you
Religion
allowing
died,
this?
wars both holy and unholy were waged, and peoples lived, mixed, moved, and died out. In other words, this happened.
Why are you allowing this?
We just wanted to hear what she.
Was that your voice?
Yeah, that's me.
Are we the reactionary ethno-state? Is Israel the reactionary ethno-state?
Oh, thank you.
Voice of a bored angel.
I mean, look, angel, but an angel nonetheless.
Yeah, look, I don't, again, there wasn't anything there that is new. There wasn't anything there that was compelling. I think that, again, we go back to World War I and the Ottoman Empire. And I think that over the decades, actually over a century, we have yet to see anything other than violence win. And what I mean by win is that tends to be where borders are being drawn. I mean, that's nothing new either, right? That's what every country has had to deal with, is their desire for border control. So, I hear views and reasonings, but I have yet to see any unwarlike agreement, right? There's never been every time there's been a treaty to try to create a state that is occupied by both, it fails. The violence breaks out.
So, Princessia, as a Palestinian, are you in favor of a two-state solution? Nora? Damn, I hate when that happens.
One thing that's interesting, you can go back to antiquity, you can go back as far as you want, but right now, the Palestinian territories are comprised of hyper-brainwashed folks who absolutely despise their neighbor of Israel. And so it's largely homogenous in terms of mindset. So I think that, you can bring poetry, but it really isn't relevant right now.
Well, the problem is that people in the West who support Palestine, they don't know the situation on the ground. They don't know that most Palestinians are against Israel and want Israel to be destroyed. But still, they support Palestine because they are well-meaning people. So they think that, okay, everybody has the right to their state and so on. But they are not informed. Do you agree with?
Yeah, look at the United States. Look at red and blue states. Look at how brainwashed people have become over a period of 5 years, 4 years, whatever. Why give people the benefit of the doubt going back thousands of years when, it is not the sentiment that is held today. There are jihadists infiltrating. Yesterday, this didn't get much coverage, but ISIS, about 8 people associated with ISIS, aligned with ISIS, or considered militants, terrorists themselves, were arrested in 4 states yesterday. I'm kind of surprised no one's talked about that. I'm on the treadmill, so I'll stop. But there's reason to worry as a Westerner, not just as a Jewish American or as an Israeli.
Yeah, it's eight immigrants from Tajikistan in New York. They were arrested in New York, Philadelphia, and Los Angeles.
Yeah, that's the kind of, that's a concern that the Justice Department, the State Department, that's a real threat, right? Talking about the potential for more acts to be perpetrated, that's the kind of thing that I think will change the narrative. And I think that, Netanyahu realizes that, hey, they're going to strike somewhere else in the West, and then people will kind of bounce back to a framework of there are terrorist cells everywhere. Be concerned for your own nation.
Also in Germany, they arrested 2 Hamas that were planning to do one attack on a military base of the United States and one of the Israeli embassy in Berlin.
I have a quick parenthesis. I was curious by Aya's comment in the chat about the national anthem of Palestine. It's called, so it translates to My Redemption or My Sacrifice. That's the name in English. And so it's just 2 paragraphs. It goes, warrior, 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 O my land, the land of the forefathers. Warrior, 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 O my people, the people of eternity. With my determination, my fire, and the volcano of my revenge, with the longing in my blood for my land and my home, I have climbed the mountains and fought the wars I have conquered the impossible and crossed the frontiers. That's it.
Isa, you want to hear in Arabic?
Not really, because I don't speak Arabic, but it would be enough if you tell me that what I just read is close enough to what it is in Arabic.
I don't know. But I just yesterday, one of the doctors that was in Gaza, that's in the UK, he was in Lebanon, and he was in front of some graduating classes in Beirut, and I'm pretty sure that that's the song that was being played.
Okay, so what I said is
I don't know. I can't speak on to that. Like, I'm not very familiar with it.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, yeah, it's right what Aya was saying.
But either way, even if this translation is correct, I find it beautiful.
Oh, wow.
Well, it might sound beautiful because you will feel identified. I will give you that. You will feel identified with the Palestinian cause, and you have the right to feel like that. But all
national anthems.
It says communication is hypnosis, right? And words matter. And so when you repeat all the time, warrior, warrior, nation, revenge, and longing in my
Isa, can you put a link up on top so we can have it?
Okay, let me
love a good underdogs.
So all of this is when we talk about the indoctrination of the Palestinian people, this is, I would say this is part of it.
But wait, is this the anthem of Palestinian autonomy, or this is Hamas?
Yeah, they call it the national anthem for Palestinians.
Princessia, did you hear my question?
No, I didn't hear it. I don't know.
Princess Nora.
What's the question?
Maybe she's ignoring me because she just spoke.
Maybe she just didn't want to answer you about
What's the question?
I asked her as a Palestinian, do you support a two-state solution? But she won't answer my question.
Where can you see more?
Look. It doesn't. Whether she.
I just wanted to know.
Yeah, I understand. And she'll answer if she wants to. But all national anthems, all people of their nations tend to like their national anthem, right? That would not be an abnormal truth.
Yeah, usually it's about, they're having an anthem about a land that they don't yet have, basically, or that they want to fight for. It's not like we are here, this is on, we are
the same, it's the same, but the American national anthem is the same. It's exactly about the fight.
What? Yeah, talk about vengeance. Talk about vengeance.
Wait, what, Princessia? Yeah, she's just ignoring me, it seems. I don't know what it is.
There are no gays in Palestine.
But you're talking about after the war, not calling for war and talking about revenge and conquering and whatever.
Well,
That's my point. I guess, Marvin, you're right. Anthems, they talk about the national spirit and about fighting and about conquering and whatever, but I don't know, talking about revenge, I don't know. That the one triggering.
I get it. It's fine. Look, it's fine. Again, right? These are all these are not even secondary points. They're all tertiary and quadriary and cinquantarian issues.
Isa, Pepe has told you that the flag of what's his island? I forget what his island is.
Corsica.
Has a severed black man's head.
A black
really?
Yeah.
No,
why did they do that?
By the way, that's not the song.
Because the black man terrorized them. They're very happy to have him out.
How did the black man? How were they all the way in Spain?
Just Google
Corsica.
Hold on. Google Corsican flag, and then go to Wikipedia, and it tells you the story.
And the Star-Spangled Banner in triumph shall wave.
What? What are you doing?
Wait, you don't know that? Do you know that verse?
No. Am I?
Verse. Oh, thus be it ever where free men shall stand between their
it's a third verse.
And the war's desolation, blessed with victory and peace. May the heaven-rescued land praise the power that hath made and preserved us a nation. And conquer we must,
if our cause it is just, and this be our motto, in God is our trust, and the star-spangled banner in triumph shall wave, for the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Play baseball.
The Americans.
The third very Hungary.
The Palestinians are the revolutionaries in this case.
Welcome to the last game of the World Series.
Are a bunch of sore losers. There's nothing revolutionary about being a sore loser.
They haven't lost yet. The war's still going. It's not over until the fat lady sings.
The losers for me.
I mean, that's what happened with after World War I for the Turks, right? The Turks were sore losers, and they went against the actual agreement. They did not adhere.
I think there's got to be a consensus here that Israel's losing in the realm of public opinion.
That's true.
Well, we know that. No, that's true. That's not.
But most
that's
people
not,
in this world are not very.
That's not news. That's not news.
So it doesn't really make it. Most people in this world believe in a magic sky daddy.
We can go to the three verses.
Well, if enough people believe something.
We can go to the three verses of the Marine Corps hymn.
Martin, do you have an iPhone?
Yeah.
Okay, can you slide your finger from the top right, and there is a new thing.
I know. I was like, oh.
Mic mode. You can put it in voice isolation,
No, I have to
and
stop.
we'll only hear your voice, not the mic.
Isa, just something came to my mind as we were speaking today.
What is voice isolation?
Did you see it?
Yeah, it already is set on voice isolation.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
So try to go to an isolated room.
Sorry.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So, Isa, something came to my mind as, like I was listening to the conversation today, and specifically the questions of statehood and legitimacy have been raised. Remember our conversation about Leviathan?
Yeah, barely, but yeah, I think, yeah.
It might be a good idea to sort of revisit Hobbesian ideas and to see how they develop, because I think people are very confused about what government is. They think it's something, especially with the current social constructivist, toxic virus that has infiltrated every portion of the society. They get very much confused about what legitimacy is, what the declaration means, how things which are actually constructed socially, how do they come to be, and so on.
I think that's a great idea.
Because the declaration and the consensus and agreement between parties, this is what legitimizes government, and the agreement of the citizens to participate in a social contract with the government legitimizes its ability to commit violence in the name of safety or protection or any other means, which any other things that the citizens deem necessary.
Yeah, I think it would be great for one of our, let's say, philosophical discussions. We can dive a little bit deeper into like the Leviathan. And I guess that you have a point, and we can bring some new perspective into the whole war conversation, just like we did with the morality of war. I think that, I like to tackle this issue not necessarily from a political perspective and like, oh, do I agree with Netanyahu or what Biden said or whatever, but more from like the philosophical thought process. That is what gets my interest, like how to see what's happening through the lens of morality and an objective morality and like the rules for human nature, like how we behave between each other or amongst each other, and how we work on the psychology of this, because in the end we're all human beings, we're all emotional, and I still believe that we are capable, just as they are, of all these monstrosities. Now, the difference is that we restrain ourselves, or that we use less our emotions or are more in control of our emotions. But we all are capable and have the ability to be the same. And so it's interesting to explore the human mind in this sense.
So I would argue.
I mean, to be fair,
One second. I would argue that that's not true. The last statement that you said, because based on your what you accept as obligatory upon you, what laws that you accept that are obligatory upon you, you're going to operate within that paradigm. So not everybody is going to come from the same place, and I do agree that morality, there's objective morality, but I disagree with your last statement because of what.
You have the same ability. Sorry, what did you say?
Internet is bad. No,
Yeah.
I think have you been reading a lot of Ayn Rand? I think you've been very much influenced by this ideology.
Oh, I'm influenced by a lot of philosophers. You know, like I am a melting pot of philosophies, and I agree with the ones that are consistent with what I believe to be my values or my principles, and then I run every single thing in my life. You know, like things that I do or things that I observe through that filter. You know. And so, one of them is Ayn Rand. I really like her. I don't agree with her 100% on everything, but I do like her. I also have the Austrian School of Economics. I also have the Austrian School of Economics, you know, and base those economic principles in human nature and human behavior. I do have various philosophers that I appreciate.
But who else except Ayn Rand promotes these ideas? I don't know who else.
Well, Ludwig von Mises talks about human action and human nature and how humans are not inherently good. Like, we are all flawed individuals, and we are also able to understand how is it that we act through our emotions and how we voluntarily get into transactions, and how it explains, you know, the human nature.
I never heard who is this person.
I just don't really understand how people base their entire political philosophy on a fictional book. I thought Ayn Rand, like Atlas Shrugged, was like some sort of like, I don't know, real book, but it's like a fictional book, and it's like
there are many books. Really, have you read any of them, Hampton?
There's a lot of. I just know the one Atlas Shrugged. That's the one I know.
There is a magnificent collection of essays called Philosophy. Who needs it?
No, but she wrote it. She wrote it. The reason why she wrote it was
a heartless woman.
Hold on. She wrote it for the intent of getting her point across. She wasn't writing a story to tell the story. She was writing it for people to understand.
But the problem is she escaped from the Soviet Union, and her ideology is reactionary to the Soviet.
Well, why is that a problem? Why is that a problem?
Well, because your ideology is just reaction to another ideology.
But why is it a problem, though? Why is that a problem? If you come to a conclusion because of a situation, does that make your conclusion a problem?
No, you don't base your ideology on fighting, right? On control.
What do you mean? I don't know what you mean by fighting. I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Yeah, so
however,
you need to have a consistent view of the world, right? Like, instead of that, you focusing on like one ideology to fight that. What?
But do you think? Do you think that America was reactionary? Do you think this idea of freedom from taxation without representation or control of the king, was that a reaction?
Well,
is that wrong? Or is America wrong?
Well, that's more John Locke's philosophy, by the way, and not who you're talking.
America is not a philosophy. America is a country based on many ideas.
Yeah, particularly John Locke and Kant.
I don't know about John Locke and Kant.
Then do your research.
It's the Scottish version of
then if you're going to say bullshit without doing your research, that shows a lot.
Just say you try to gaslight me.
No, that's not the meaning of gaslight. You should learn what that actually means.
Yenia is your victim then, so you're giving power to Kyle for your actions, Yenia.
No, he just makes a controversial statement as if it was like a fact, and then he says, "Go and make your research." It's ridiculous.
It's not a controversial statement. Anyone who's actually studied this would understand that, yes, democracies have had philosophers that have philosophized before those democracies were put in place.
No, America's just country with bad ideas. There is no philosophy, no history of anything. Your country is just ideas and useless discourse.
Hi, Borat. Hi, Borat. What's up?
Hi, Edmund.
No, the Freemason founders, George Washington, they were all fools. They had no understanding of Greek philosophy, Roman philosophy, Jewish philosophy, Indian. They knew nothing. You understand? America's just bad ideas.
Yo, brother, the replay is
That's
on.
why everybody wants to come here, because it's a bad idea.
Not everybody wants to come.
It was the idea that was so bad that it has influx of people like no other country.
Well, I think it's again like it's such a like everybody wants to come to Moscow if you live in Russia or
Not
Tajikistan.
really. Not really.
Yeah, like it used to be everybody wanted to go to Moscow. So does it make... No, why are you laughing? Like if you live in Tajikistan and Belarus and Kazakhstan, you come to Moscow. You think it proves that Moscow is a good thing or what?
You're absolutely right. No, you're absolutely right. In Soviet Union, where the borders were closed, and the only option was to travel within Soviet Union, Moscow was the best thing available.
No, even in the 90s.
That's why everybody wanted to go to Moscow in the Soviet Union. As soon as the borders were open, everybody wanted to leave the whole country behind.
Oh, wait a second. But even like 10 years ago, like people from Tajikistan and Moldova and Belarus would go to Moscow. Or okay,
because
forget
they
about
couldn't
Moscow.
afford to go to United States, Jaina. If they
Yeah, forget about Moscow. Like, what about UAE? Like, so many people go to UAE. Think it proves that UAE is a great system?
Right.
No,
They go to
and
vacation to the UAE.
and all these Jews. Look at all the Jews that did Aliyah. They make bad decision to go back to their homeland.
Sure. Are you John Locke? Yeah, so like some countries are just rich and that's why people go there, so it doesn't prove anything.
So you can achieve a lot in those countries. There's a difference.
I mean, we can look at the rich countries and see how many people go there, and I would bet nutshells against diamonds that the United States still is going to be the more desirable out of those for some reason.
And I would say to Yenia, I mean, I don't know why philosophy bothers you. Everyone has got a philosophy, whether you are aware of it or not. You have a philosophy through which you manage your life and how you navigate the world. Now, when you are not aware of these concepts, you allow other people to impose their own philosophy on you. And so this is the importance of actually understanding these ideas and understanding the principles that are behind these ideas and the values behind these ideas, so that you can actually live a consistent life and you can act as you think and walk your talk, you know. So being against philosophy is just dumb, because you have a philosophy, even if you're not aware of it.
I think you misunderstood me. Why do you think I'm against philosophy? But it doesn't matter. I'm not against
He
philosophy.
just doesn't know philosophy. He's not against it. He doesn't understand Stoicism. He doesn't understand the ancients. He's never read Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah, right. Good point. No, I just don't like...
Matata, it's a problem-free philosophy.
No, I don't like...
Hakuna Matata means no problems. No problem.
What?
It's Swahili for no problem.
Okay. No, I prefer other philosophical ideas. I don't like...
Do you like Karl Marx?
What, do you like a big fan of Alexander Dugin or something?
You hate what, Kyle?
Jenny, are you a fan of Dugin?
No, not really. I think, okay, if you find somebody who is worse than Arendt is Dugin, but it's a very low bar, to be honest. Why, Kyle?
I
Why are
have
you
to agree with that.
defending?
Was Joseph Stalin a philosopher?
No, Lenin maybe was like kind of not a philosopher, but intellectual.
But Issa
Stalin
just said
was-
that everyone was a philosopher, that we all have our own personal philosophy on how we view the
No, I didn't
universe.
say that. I said that we all use philosophy to manage our lives. I didn't say that all of us are philosophers.
But if we use philosophy, that makes me a philosopher, no?
I'm just gonna mute up.
I want to know from Hampton if he'd liked Atlas Shrugged or not.
I never read it, and I have no desire to read it. I just know.
Well,
I don't
it's a
like
terrible
her.
book, so save yourself the time.
I think I watched a little bit of the movie. Like, they made a movie about it, and I was like, what the hell is this? And I just turned it off. But it's basically just like the givers, like, I guess, what is it? The people that don't produce, like, are requiring or like mooching off of the people that are actually producing.
Yeah,
so the
horrible.
people that produce
Movie's
stop.
horrible.
Yeah.
No, like the idea.
I mean, that part is real life, right? That actually happens, but just saying as a novel is terrible.
Who is John Galt?
No, it's just. I think her book became popular because of Brother Cox, who started promoting like this ideology because it suited their purposes. They're pro-business, like lower regulation. Everybody should be an egoist. So, and yeah, that's why we talk about this. Otherwise,
Yet we talk about her because she is outside of the government production paradigm. She is a libertarian capitalist who does not believe in government-sanctioned capitalism.
Yes, exactly.
Well, she did believe in government, actually. He believed in a minimal government, which is the most utopian of all political ideology.
No, the most utopian of all is yours, Diego, anarchism.
No, because anarchy happens every day. But minimal
it
government
doesn't.
is a pipe dream.
It happens.
Nobody's forcing Hampton to be here right now. He's a free man.
Markets are anarchical, but society isn't.
I mean, in one sense, Ayn Rand was right? The question isn't who's going to let me, it's who's going to try to stop me. Hampton comes into this room and leaves the room at his own will. He's a free man. He goes to Walmart freely. He drives around everywhere he wants freely. The only question is, who stands there to stop him? What's the boot?
Well, I could
and what's
stop
the gun?
him and kick him out of the room.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you lost to Diego.
No, Diego is not recognizing the power of the green bean. He doesn't understand curation and moderation. That is why he's never green bean.
Edmund.
Yeah, by the way, responding to Kyle's point, I think America was populated by different people. Different people came to America with different backgrounds. Like you had like very conservative people from Britain, maybe very progressive people from France, from Germany. So you cannot say like they were influenced by one certain kind of idea.
Yes, it is called Constitution and Declaration of Independence. Maybe you should try reading it.
Actually, in the sense, in the legal sense, they were really influenced by the same legal edifice, which is the Justinian Code, the Roman law. They all share that in common.
Not really. I mean, you should really talk to Bren about this. I think
especially Russian.
Straighten you out on this.
He's going to straighten you out, all right, and suck you off afterwards and enjoy the communist throat.
If I'm not mistaken, Russia was the last refuge of kind of a pure Roman law.
I didn't know. John, you always talk like that.
Yes, я понимаю по-русски, comrade. I am a descendant of a KGB agent who was lost here in America. I would tell Putin I want to return to Moscow to collect my grandfather's pension from the Presidium.
You know what? You gotta admit that John has some pretty hilarious. That's pretty powerful.
He's fucking smart. He's trolling all the time.
I'm his biggest fan.
Those are some really accurate. How do you come up with that?
He speaks truth.
He speaks perfect Russian accent.
But no one has had the pleasure. No one has had the pleasure of meeting him in person except for me.
Yeah, Diego,
Really?
can you tell us the story about how you met Edmund?
I was in LA at a gas station and I saw him walking in front of me. I said, "Hey, Edmund," and he stopped.
So you mean
and he
John
turned
was
around
doing
and he
Russian?
said, "Oh, what did you say, John?"
I said,
John was
"Reboy no
making Russian accent.
And what else did you say? The praxeologist.
I thought he was doing Borat.
Yes, until you read books and you can actually discuss the books that you read, then otherwise you guys are just making opinion formulation, useless discourse.
That's right. So what was your impression of Diego, John, when you met him?
You do not need to couch his credibility in the fact that he met me. He stands on his own 10 toes deep in the ground with his Ukrainian wife and porcelain doll children.
That's funny. No, what happened was that he got a little bit nervous. I think he wasn't expecting to run into any of us, as if we're not real to him.
10 toes down.
That would freak me out if I ran into somebody from Clubhouse. That would freak me the
Yeah,
fuck
the
out.
thing is that I find it so random that you being in a gas station in Edmond crossing
On a Sunday morning.
On a Sunday morning, wherever, in a random
Like at
place.
8 a.m.,
It's
so it wasn't even like
did
a
it
reasonable
actually
hour.
Was it actually a thing of the coincidence, or I don't know, did you follow him?
No, obviously I did not. I will just say though that I have compassion for Diego because, you know, anybody who can spend his entire day on Clown House clearly does not have many responsibilities or financial priorities. So I'm just saying
Isn't that you? You spent all day on Clubhouse.
I may be projecting, but I'm just saying that, you know, if you're going to come on Clown House and talk about Jews all day long, you're conditioning yourself to actually like Jews, which is the irony. Because there's a lot of Jews on this app that are gonna invert what you say, push back, and make you a Jew lover. And so congratulations, you all love the Jews. That's why you keep talking about the Jews.
Man,
why I always go to the movie
make
theater.
us look bad here in Clubhouse, unfortunately.
Where did you go?
Now he's explained my incessant desire to go see movies at the movie theater.
Who looks bad, Andrew?
I think a lot of Jews here in Clubhouse don't make us look great.
But going back to the argument of legitimacy,
Say some names.
Make me
Say
look
some
great,
names,
or
Andrew.
a lot of atheists. I mean, yeah, there are a lot of people here that don't.
I'm lucky because I'm not Jewish. My mother is not a Jew. I am a patrilineal Jew fighting for patrilineal Jewish rights against racist, bigoted matrilineal Jews like Andrew.
Yeah, fight the power.
To the extent that you guys are willing to entertain a discussion, it seems to me that that you guys are seeking to legitimize the actions of that state, and that you think that legitimacy comes from consent of the
You make it seem like you make it seem like you're 100 years old, bro. It's 2024. Where were you in 1945 and 1950? I mean, who the fuck are you? You didn't do anything.
There's a gleam in my daddy's eye.
You don't want to be kicked out.
You didn't do anything.
Time, honey.
Honey, darling, I can't wait to be free of you fucking morons. Free me and liberate me. For God's sakes, I came to get kicked, baby.
Everybody say goodbye to Edmund.
Ribono Shaloim!
Love you.
Sent you the lecture. I sent you the YouTube clip, didn't I? I can send you again. I'm not. I think I shared it with you the other day, but I can send it to you again.
It is. What you made me say? What?
Get the fuck out of here. You getting me?
I'm your pops, nigga.
What the fuck you getting me?
I'm your pops, nigga. You
So what you getting me?
You getting these nuts?
Welcome back to Clown Town, the never-ending clown show.
Admin, what are you doing?
Where's Adams? Where's Adams so he can stand 10 toes in the ground?
You can't be normal for 1 second, Admin.
Hello? 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 Hello?
A fucking motherfucker.
Hello? Hello?
What are you doing for Father's Day?
What am I doing for Father's Day? Don't you know that's the most confusing day in the ghetto?
Your favorite flipping idiot. I know my dad, asshole.
Niggas out here with 3 legs still.
Nigga, stop.
Big love, bitch. Oi, 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 oi. Oh yeah. Big love, bitch.
Both of these niggas.
Bro, that girl pisses me off.
$2, John. Man, kick them niggas.
Oh yeah. Big love, bitch.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Big love, bitch.
I need to stop. We're looking at me.
Oh yeah. Free love, big love, bitch.
Can I get an oh yeah? Oh yeah.
Can I get an oh yeah? Big love, bitch.
John, chill out, John.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Y'all laying shop.
Oh yeah.
Exactly, bro.
Oh yeah. Admin, oh yeah.
Shut the hell up, Shy. Think about it.
Oh my god, there's a fucking bee next to me.
Exactly. That's what your ass.
Stop being homo.
Ooh, gotta calm down.
Girl, you the flower.
It's following me.
You the flower.
It's following me.
You the
It
flower.
doesn't wanna stay away from me.
Don't hate the bee, love the bee. You the flower.
No, I'm not the flower, bro. That shit.
Go ahead and take the deepest breath of the day through your nose and hold it for 10 seconds.
Who said I'm not
I'm a flower.
Am I ugly?
Yeah.
I look like your mother. Is your mother ugly?
Ooh. Motherfucker.
Your mother's a beautiful woman, ain't she? Your mother's a beautiful
motherfucker.
I'll show you.
You motherfucker.
Stop showing your dead man's mom as your mom, bro.
You
That's
fucking with a flower. You fucking with a flower.
I'm about to show
Hey, you don't know what I look like for real? I gotta show you what I look like.
That's my OG for real.
Why nigga worrying about my picture, gang?
That's my OG for real with the blonde.
You fucking with a flower. You know what happens when you fuck with a flower?
Tay, I want you to roast me, right, Tay? Tay, you gotta roast me. PCR, roast me.
You fucking with a flower.
Shy, why you showing her yourself, bro?
Tay, roast me.
Don't fuck with no flower. You fuck around.
What I look like.
You fuck around with a flower, you gonna flower out.
Fall bad, nigga.
Should I look like who?
Please come home now. I got bees and bologna.
Yeah, but shut the fuck up.
Yo, PTR, that's really.
Y'all shut the hell up. Shy,
What
why
I
you
look
showing
like,
this nigga your stuff?
I need to go to rehab.
Hello?
What I look like? What I look like? PTR.
You look like a chameleon. Like Oscar's ass or something. No, man.
Hey, yo, Oscar, PTR. What I look
Who
like?
the hell is this nigga? I'm staying right, man.
Hey, Shy, what's your number? You look like JJ Fish.
I'm not giving you my number.
Nah.
Actually, nigga.
Hey, can I get your number, sweetheart?
No. You always calling me a fat Mexican bitch.
Hey, bro, I'm new to that. What you talking about?
Leave me alone. You ain't into me.
You make ass girl.
You're like 12, bro. I'll go to jail
I
fucking
didn't
with you,
miss
bro.
talking to you, bro. I ain't gonna lie. I hate going to jail.
What the fuck? Shut the
I ain't
fuck
gonna lie,
up.
boy. It's gonna turn out to be like, I'm rusted up and shit. Gonna lie, man. I gotta have that bomb money. That sounds cold. You gotta have that bomb money.
Shouldn't be using the F word like that.
I need me a Pepsi.
See, I made your ass hungry.
Yo, why would you say that? I've been without soda for a while now. Do not make me crave that shit. Do not make me crave that shit.
Pepsi sounds good. I'm gonna get me a Pepsi
Some
too.
soda.
We buying you right now. Hey, next week.
That looks like a tasty burger.
I need me a Sprite. Yeah, no, you got these white people, man. I've been looking for my
The big Kahuna burger.
Why you paying on, bro? Where you from?
I don't know. You might be working for 12.
Oh, where you selling narcotics?
Shit.
Taking, little brother.
Now that is a tasty burger.
You look sweet as fuck. I'll buck you, man. You said what? You'll get your ass bucked. Well, I got 240 on my left. I ain't worried about you.
Hello? Hello?
But I get you touched right now.
You know what I mean, nigga? 5 out of 10.
I'm a Flint baby, you hear me?
I don't give a fuck, nigga. I'm from Charlotte.
Ghetto, nigga. For real.
Hey, Bando Katie, come up here. Get on this nigga ass. Bitch ass nigga. Ain't you from Flint?
The Bando got a little ass chain on. He got a little tennis chain.
He from Flint?
Yeah.
Man, you making fun of a man's tennis chain? You a girl.
Yeah, tennis bracelet on it too.
Man, go to Christie's and buy yourself something nice.
Talking about real pants.
Go to Tiffany's and get yourself something beautiful.
Poured up a 401. I'm looking at my ring right now. Yeah, nigga, it costs money a car.
Oh my gosh.
Takes money to make money.
They want to
More money be made with no money than money made with money.
Why you ain't kicked him yet?
Bubbles.
Hello?
The worst moderator ever. Oh, God.
Look at that.
We talking about he the president of Clown Town. You all answer to the president.
Yeah, this nigga, he put in a worst bouncer. You can never hire this nigga nowhere. Yeah, Oscar, man, he's the worst bouncer ever, man.
You want me to close it?
Bouncer? This ain't no nightclub. This a Clown Town.
How the fuck this nigga call me a bouncer? What's wrong with him? What the hell wrong with him?
Hold on. Yeah. I'm gonna beat the eyes of this house.
Tweaking.
Hello?
Somebody get their daddy out the room, bro.
Daddy's Day, where did my daddy go today? Happy Father's Day!
But this gotta be an autistic son, honestly.
I'm on the spectrum.
You need a diaper at this point.
I'm on the spectrum.
It's just a little slow.
Happy Father's Day!
Don't pay him no attention, bro.
Don't make no water bottle. Maybe a wheelchair.
Ooh, an electric wheelchair?
Emma, it's okay. He doesn't want it.
What the fuck, man?
This is a playground.
Hello?
You ain't know, bro.
There's niggas that speak every second. You got this girl right here with a child. And then you got lips right there looking like a lizard. Don't make no sense, bro. That shit don't make no sense, bro.
Oh.
Shit don't make no sense, bro.
So what
doing, Oscar? Shoot around, man.
Theodore Kaczynski tried to get away from it all. Randy Weaver tried to get away from it all. Everyone who died at Waco tried to get away.
The boy
My
ain't
nigga
shit,
retarded. You're gonna let this nigga ruin his room before he picks him up.
You don't want me to tweak.
Ooh, girl.
No offense, Eddie.
Do it back for your ass to get mine.
I'm not gonna keep him up.
Whoa. I don't know what's going on. What's going on in the clubhouse?
Up with news stories that center neither China nor America, but that do center certain universal values, and that give a bridge between America and what comes next, as America itself was a bridge between the British Empire and the post-World War II world. We give 4 concrete examples in this chapter. But to be clear, just because a story decenters America doesn't mean it has to be punitive. That is, these stories don't have to condemn the U.S. any more than the post-war order of 1945 to 1991 put the U.K. in the dock, or the 1991 to 2021 order really beat up on the Soviets that much. Indeed, a news story could well feature past aspects of the U.S. in laudatory ways. The main commonality is that we need news stories that no longer assume the U.S. establishment will continue to be at the center of the world, or else people will be psychologically unprepared for that eventuality. Another way of thinking about it is that the right kind of news story turns constants into variables. Just as Bitcoin turned the constant of the US dollar into a variable, we need news stories that turn the constant of the US establishment into a variable. By decentering the US establishment in our mental models, we enable decentralization. We envision a world where the US may not be there for us, because it was not always there in the past, and may not endure far into the future. Here are 4 such stories. The first is the tale of the fragmentation of the post-war consensus. The second is a generalization of Frederick Jackson Turner's frontier thesis. The third recapitulates the 4th turning concept from Strauss and Howe, as well as Turchin and Dalio's work, all of which predict significant conflict to come in the West. The 4th talks about how our future is our past, how the mid-20th century is like a funhouse mirror moment, and how we are now seeing a bizarre phenomenon where we repeat past events but get opposite outcomes. All of them turn constants into variables, as they describe a pre-American era where the U.S. didn't yet exist, and thereby prepare us for a post-American period where the U.S. in its current form no longer exists. The fragmentation thesis. The Sovereign Individual, written in 1999, is an incredible book that nailed many aspects of our digital future decades in advance, Bitcoin Prime among them. We won't recapitulate the whole thing here, but in short, the thesis is that after many generations in which technology favored centralization, railroads, telegraph, radio, television, movies, mass production, since about 1950, it is now favoring decentralization. Transistor, personal computer, internet, remote work, smartphone, cryptocurrency. So by this measure, peak centralization was about 1950, when there was one telephone company, AT&T, 2 superpowers, US and USSR, and 3 TV stations, ABC, CBS, and NBC. Even though the 1950s are romanticized in the US, and there were certainly good things about the era, that level of centralization was not natural. This was an enormous degree of cultural homogenization, conformity, and sameness relative to the pre-1914 world just a few decades prior. Many aspects of individual initiative, creativity, and freedom had been dulled down or eliminated in the standardization process. Read William H. White's The Organization Man or James Burnham's Managerial Revolution for a portrait of this mid-century time period. At the time, the mid-century US was more corporatist than entrepreneurial. Yes, the system was capitalism, but a highly managed and regulated sort of capitalism. It was all about joining the big company and working your way up, not founding one, except for the rare and just beginning startup phenomenon on the West Coast, which was a millionfold less common than it is now. Everything was significantly to the economic left and social right of where it is today. Yes, the USA wasn't communist, but it did have 90% top marginal tax rates to stop any new people from getting rich and potentially threatening the system FDR built. Similarly, the USSR was far more socially conservative than is commonly remembered, doing things like taxing childless women to reduce their status if they didn't reproduce. Typically, those who complain about filter bubbles are actually complaining that there is more than one. Namely, they are annoyed that all information doesn't derive from establishment sources only. That situation actually did obtain in the mid-century US, when tens of millions of Americans all assembled in their living rooms at the same time to watch I Love Lucy. Then it all decentralized, fragmented. The story is told in essays like Paul Graham's Refragmentation and in The Sovereign Individual, and we call this the fragmentation thesis, the frontier thesis. In the late 1800s, Frederick Jackson Turner gave an influential talk on the concept of the frontier as the crucial driving force in American history. At that time, it was understood that the free land of the frontier was crucial to the U.S. in several ways, as a way for the ambitious to seek their fortunes, as a national aspiration in the form of manifest destiny, as bare land for social experiments. Today, of course, the concept of the frontier and manifest destiny is not only not admired, but has been pathologized since the 60s by the same deconstructionism that is one half of wokeness. You know the story. The American frontiersmen, like Columbus before them, were racists, colonialists, and imperialists. But 2 points on this before we proceed. The first is that there were N tribes fighting in the Americas before the arrival of the Spanish, the British, and the like. The Europeans simply represented tribes N+1, N+2, and so on. Had one of the Native American tribes developed a technological edge over any of the European tribes, had they invented oceanic navigation, they would likely have invaded Europe. We can infer this because A, when the Mongols had a similar technological edge, they did invade Europe, and B, many North American tribes were by contemporaneous accounts people accustomed to war. So it's old-fashioned, but it's probably healthier to think of the Native Americans more like the 300 Spartans than as helpless victims. Brave warriors who fought valiantly but lost to superior forces. The second is that if you read books like Reich's Who We Are and How We Got Here, it makes clear that history is a boneyard. Contra the opening notes of Microsoft's recent Ignite conference, there's probably not a single ethnic group on the planet that simply peacefully occupied their plot of land since time immemorial. One tribe's homeland was once their distant ancestors' frontier. So, with that as preface, let's generalize the frontier thesis. One way of thinking about it is that the frontier actually opened in 1492, well before the founding of the Americas. What's little known is that Columbus's voyage to the New World was in part driven by the Ottoman blockade of the Eastern Mediterranean. It was an attempt to find an alternative path to India around the Ottomans, but it ended up using technology to reopen the frontier in the face of political roadblocks. From 1492 to 1890, Europeans had what they considered a frontier. It started with transatlantic navigation and the discovery of the New World, then proceeded to European colonialism, and from there to the independence of the US and Western expansion via manifest destiny. Towards the end of this period, authors like Charles Nordhoff in Communistic Societies of the United States noted how important the frontier was, how bad it would be if that avenue for ambitious men was closed off, and how nasty the trade unionists were getting. Hitherto, in the United States, our cheap and fertile lands have acted as an important safety valve for the enterprise and discontent of our non-capitalist population. Every hired workman knows that if he chooses to use economy and industry in his calling, he may without great or insurmountable difficulty establish himself in independence on the public lands. And in fact, a large proportion of our most energetic and intelligent mechanics do constantly seek these lands. I do not doubt that the eagerness of some of our wisest public men for the acquisition of new territory has arisen from their conviction that this opening for the independence of laboring men was essential to the security of our future as a free and peaceful state. Any circumstance, as the exhaustion of these lands, which should materially impair this opportunity for independence, would be, I believe, a serious calamity to our country. And the spirit of the trades unions and international societies appears to me peculiarly mischievous and hateful, because they seek to eliminate from the thoughts of their adherents the hope or expectation of independence. The member of a trades union is taught to regard himself and to act towards society as a hireling for life. And these societies are united, not as men seeking a way to exchange dependence for independence, but as hirelings, determined to remain such, and only demanding better conditions of their masters. If it were possible to infuse with this spirit all or the greater part of the non-capitalist class in the United States, this would, I believe, be one of the gravest calamities which could befall us as a nation. For it would degrade the mass of our voters and make free government here very difficult, if it did not entirely change the form of our government and expose us to lasting disorders and attacks upon property. Nordhoff was right. The aggression of the trade unions eventually led to the communist revolutions which killed tens of millions of people globally, led to lasting disorders and attacks upon property, and generally became the bane of the world. We can attribute some of this to the pause, to the closing of the frontier in 1890. That closing took away paths for ambitious men and ensured that they couldn't easily become founders on their own plot of land. They had to become union organizers or revolutionaries or demagogues of some kind. Without the frontier, it all became zero-sum. And thus we entered the steel cage match of the 20th century between fascism, communism, and democratic capitalism. There were some important frontier-related technological developments during this period in space shuttles and cruise ships, but the frontier itself was not open. Humanity managed to survive through a bloody 20th century. After 1991, the frontier reopened as commerce on the internet was legalized. By the late 2010s, the combination of centralization and wokification in the West and Xi-ification in China threatened to close this frontier too. But Bitcoin and Web3 and the open metaverse have given the digital frontier a new lease on life. Today, if we assess where we're at, there are four possibilities for the frontier: the land, the internet, the sea, and space. Right now, there are 7.7 billion people on land, 3.2 billion on the internet, about 2 to 3 million on the high seas, and less than 10 currently in space. So, practically speaking, an internet frontier is easier than the other three. If we're lucky, we'll be able to use the concepts from the network state to reopen the physical frontier through a hybrid internet and land strategy, as described in this book. To summarize, A, the period of European greatness corresponded to the open frontier from 1492 to 1890. B, the period of total war corresponded to the closing frontier from 1890 to 1991, which ushered in a necessarily zero-sum world. C, the peaceful reopening of the digital frontier could lead us again to a time of greatness. D, the American and Chinese establishments are trying to close that frontier and trap us into the same steel cage match of the 20th century. E, but with sufficiently good technology, we might be able to escape these political roadblocks. And F, reopen not just a digital frontier, but a physical one, on remote pieces of land, on the sea, and eventually in space. This is what we refer to as the generalized frontier thesis, the fourth turning thesis. The fourth turning and ages of discord both predict very significant unrest within the U.S. in the coming years. Ray Dalio does as well in Principles for Dealing with the Changing World Order, though he confines most of his comments to monetary apocalypse. Their models are somewhat related. The fourth turning came out in 1997 and is based on a quasi-cyclical theory of Anglo-American history where conflict erupts roughly every 75 years. If you believe in these patterns and want a possible underlying driver of them, 75 years is about one long human lifespan. So perhaps those who do not remember history really are doomed to repeat it. Turchin's predictions came out around 2008 in a Nature article, and he's written them up at length in War and Peace and War. He has impressive time-stamped graphs with specific forecasts as to why conflict will rise, using various measures for societal instability like elite overproduction and the wage share of the masses. Dalio's thesis is that we're about to experience events that have never happened before in our lives, but have happened many times before in history. He goes back further than the fourth turning to the British and Dutch empires, and has some quasi-quantitative analysis to support his view. All three of these works predict significant physical and or monetary conflict in America in the 2020s, and in Dalio's case, a consequent changing of the world order. We call this the fourth turning thesis. The future is our past thesis. Take a look at this video of unmixing a fluid. Isn't that bizarre? You can see the same process going backward in time in an unexpected way. This is not the kind of trajectory we expect to see, but it happens under certain conditions. And it's one model for what's happening in the world as we re-decentralize after a century of centralization. In other words, an important consequence of the fragmentation thesis is that our future may be more like our past. If peak centralization was around 1950, with one telephone company, AT&T, and two superpowers, US, USSR, and three television stations, ABC, CBS, NBC, we grow more decentralized as we move in either direction from that point. Essentially, the invention of the transistor in 1947 is like a mirror moment. And as you go forward and backward in time, you start to see events repeating, but as funhouse mirror versions of themselves, often with the opposite outcome. Our future is our past. Let's go through some examples. Today, the internet frontier reopens. Back then, the western frontier closed. Today, we experience COVID-19. Back then, we experienced the Spanish flu. Today, we have tech billionaires. Back then, we had the captains of industry. Today, founders like Elon Musk and Jack Dorsey seem to be winning against establishment journalists. Back then, the likes of Ida Tarbell demagogued and defeated Rockefeller. Today, we have cryptocurrencies. Back then, we witnessed the era of private banking. Today, we have a populist movement of digital gold advocates. Back then, we had a populist movement against gold in the form of the Cross of Gold speech. Today, we have the inflation and cultural conflict of Weimar America. Back then, we had the inflation and cultural conflict of Weimar Germany. Today, in Weimar America, we have right and left fighting in the streets. Back then, in Weimar Germany, we had left and right fighting in the streets. Today, the capitalists successfully teamed up with the generals against a sitting president. Back then, the generals sided with the sitting president against the capitalists. Today, we have what Turchin considers antebellum-like polarization. Back then, we had what we now know to be antebellum polarization. Today, we have Airbnb. Back then, we had flop houses. Today, we have Uber. Back then, we had gypsy cabs. Today, the New York Times sides with Ukraine to fight nationalist Russia. Back then, the New York Times sided with communist Russia to starve out Ukraine. Today, we see the transition from neutral to yellow journalism. Back then, we saw the transition from yellow to neutral journalism. Today, figures like Mike Moritz think of China as energetic and America as laconic. But back then, folks like Bertrand Russell thought of America as energetic and China as laconic. We can think of more examples with respect to the emerging Second Cold War. Today, we're seeing the Chinese and Russians again line up against the West, except this time the Chinese are the senior partner in the relationship. Today, we may see a third group arise outside of the Cold War axis, except this time, rather than being the third world and non-aligned, it may be Web 3 and economically aligned. And today, depending on how the economics play out, that third faction may come in first, the second world may come in second, and the former first world may end up last. And if we go back further in time, today, we see a US that's gradually federalizing into individual states and an Indian state that's unified many subcontinental ethnic groups. Back in the late 1940s, we saw an India that was gradually centralizing away from individual princely states, and a United States that unified many European ethnicities. Today, we're seeing so far unsuccessful calls for wealth seizures in the US. Back then, we saw Executive Order 6102, the successful seizure of gold. Today, we're seeing the rise of the pseudonymous founder and startup societies. Back then, in the 1770s, we saw pseudonymous founders of startup countries. Today, we're seeing the re-encryption of the map. Further back in time, before 1492, maps had terra incognita. The careful observer will note that these events aren't all happening in exactly the same reverse order. It's not A, B, C, D, and then D, C, B, A like a melody. Moreover, the first set of events is more spaced out over time, while the second is highly clumped together, with internet-era events years rather than decades apart. Finally, the repetition of each event is often not exactly the same as the previous, but often a version 3.0. For example, Bitcoin is not simply the same as gold, but a version 3.0 that combines some aspects of gold and some aspects of digitized fiat currencies. Still, there seems to be something going on. What's the unifying theory here? One model, as just discussed in the fragmentation thesis, is that technology favored centralization in the West, and especially the US, from arguably 1754 to 1947, join or die in the French and Indian War, unified national government post-Civil War, railroads, telegraph, radio, television, movies, mass media in general, and mass production. And technology is now favoring decentralization from roughly 1950 to the present day. Transistor, personal computer, internet, remote work, smartphone, cryptocurrency. So in the West, the grip of the centralized state has begun to slacken. The East is a different matter. After a century of communism, socialism, civil war, and partition, China and India are more internally unified than they've been in a long time. Before we immediately jump to thinking that world is ending, though, we should note that during the rise of Western centralized power, people, understandably, complained about centralized power and homogeneity, just as today, during the fall of Western centralized power, they are complaining about fragmentation and lack of common voice. That doesn't mean we've come full circle exactly. As per the helical theory of history, we might have progressed or regressed. But there may be an underlying cycle. The empire, long divided, must unite. Long united, must divide. Anyway, this model would explain why we're seeing an inversion. There was an upward arc that favored the centralized state, but now we're in the middle of a downward arc that favors the decentralized network. So various historical events are recurring with the opposite results, like the fluid flowing in reverse. And that's the thesis on how our future is our past. Left is the new right is the new left. Marx's concept of a class struggle has been so influential that people don't realize that sometimes those revolutionary classes won and became ruling classes, and then in turn fought the subsequent revolutionary classes. In fact, they often did. Understanding this is important if you want to build a startup society. Unless you are significantly differentiated from the establishment, unless you have a 10 times value proposition, as a venture capitalist would put it, you're not going to attract citizens. Social differentiation means being revolutionary in some sense, not necessarily in the sense of the Paris Commune, but morally revolutionary in the sense of inverting some premise that society at large thinks is good, yet that you can show, through your meticulous study of history, is actually bad. That moral inversion is the moral innovation that's the basis for a startup society, and it leads us ineluctably to left versus right. Why discuss left and right at all? Wait, can't we just do technology without politics, or use technology to escape politics? Unfortunately, no, because politics is about people who disagree with you. If you're working with computers or robots or pure math, you don't have politics. If you're in a highly aligned society, you don't have politics either. But to build such a highly aligned society from scratch, you need to think about politics. Put another way, if the startup founders of the 2000s and 2010s had to level up beyond technology to learn business, the startup society founders of the 2020s need to add history and politics to their curriculum. Because a theory of left and right is necessary for nation formation. Our theory begins by discussing the split between visions of moral and technological progress, the analogy between political and financial arbitrage, the market for revolutionaries of both the political activist and tech founder type, and the concept of startup societies as a way to reunify moral and technological progress. Next, we discuss left and right as real constructs, using the spatial theory of voting to obviate the objection that left and right don't really exist, and qualifying our observation by noting these are point-in-time constructs. Subsequently, we discuss how left and right change over time, using examples from what we call the left, right, and libertarian cycles, in the context of both state-oriented political movements and more recent network-centric tech startups. Finally, we discuss several specific flippenings through history, where winning teams changed ideological orientation upon victory, and give a thesis on what the next flippening will look like, reunifying technological and moral progress. Before we get into left versus right, the concept of starting a new project with a moral rather than technological innovation will be unfamiliar to many tech founders. So let's make it familiar. First, we need to understand the surprising similarities between startup founders and political activists, between those focused on technological innovation and those interested in moral good. The turn-of-the-century progressives thought of these as the same thing. Progress was both technological and moral progress. Public sanitation, for example, was both a technological innovation and a moral good. Cleanliness was next to godliness. More recently, technological and moral innovators have grown to be at odds because the U.S. establishment now regards its economic disruptors as enemies. As we'll get to, the idea of funding presidents of startup societies around the world could reunify technological and moral progress. But what exactly do we mean by moral progress? Moral progress is moral innovation, is moral inversion. If you want to produce moral and not just technological progress, you're going to have to introduce new moral premises that invert what people previously believed. So one man's moral innovation is another man's moral inversion. Here are some specific examples. Smoking was acceptable, is now considered bad. Alcohol was bad during Prohibition, is now acceptable. Profit was bad under communism, is now acceptable. College was once considered merely acceptable, but in the post-war era became good. Some observations immediately come to mind. First, from this list, you should be able to generate many more examples. We avoided the very obvious ones. And you might realize that a significant fraction of today's public conversation is devoted to debating whether X is morally good or bad, usually without stating it quite so bluntly. Second, a moral innovation need not flip something all the way from good to bad. Simply flipping it from bad to acceptable or acceptable to bad can be highly consequential. Third, we can see that moral progress is not as straightforward as technological progress.
I don't complain.
The premise that profit was bad was actually a terrible innovation that led to tens of millions dead and a worse-off world. By contrast, the Enlightenment's moral innovations were good, at least in the sense that they led to technological development. Fourth, that last point shows that benchmarking what moral good means is non-trivial. Does it mean deontologically good or consequentially good? That is this moral principle good in some abstract sense, or is it good because it produces measurably good results? Fifth, if a given society has its moral foundations generally right, then most of the proposed moral innovations or inversions will actually make people worse off if imposed on the populace at large. All of this is true. Nevertheless, a key realization for a tech founder should be that a significant fraction of people want moral progress. Just as much as the technologist wants to get to Mars, a large chunk of society wants to feel like the good guys fighting in some grand cause. And if you don't give them that cause, they'll make one up and or start fighting each other. Note that Mars is itself a moral cause when framed in terms of backing up humanity or exploring the final frontier. Another realization is that consent can bound the scope of moral innovation. The communist revolutions of the 20th century were evil not just because of their murderous results, but because they ran a giant human experiment on people against their will. Those who wanted to opt out, to exit, were stopped by Berlin walls and Iron Curtains. But the forgotten American communistic societies of the 1800s were generally good, because only those who wanted to be there remained. Anyone who didn't like it could leave. That's why the reopening of the frontier is so important. It gives space to morally innovate without affecting those who don't consent to the experiment. A third realization is that technological innovation drives moral innovation. While human nature may be roughly constant, technology is not. So new tech causes the introduction of new moral principles, or the reevaluation of old ones. Consider the premise that freedom of speech is good. That means one thing in 1776, another thing during the era of highly centralized mass media, and yet another in an era when everything reduces to speech-like digital symbols transmitted over the internet. A related realization is that moral innovation drives technological innovation. Once it was no longer considered morally evil to propose a heliocentric model, people could develop more accurate star charts, which in the fullness of time got us to oceanic navigation, satellites, and space travel. Conversely, if you introduce the premise that digital centralization is bad, you move down the branch of the tech tree that begins with Bitcoin. A final realization is that just like most attempts at technological innovation fail, most attempts at moral innovation will also fail. However, if those failures occur within the bounded confines of a consensual startup society, they're more acceptable as the price of moral progress. Political arbitrage and financial arbitrage. A moral inversion is a form of political arbitrage. Nietzsche criticized it when Christianity did it, but also had to admit it worked. Why did it work? One view is that afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted is essentially the same concept as buy low, sell high. You're supporting something when it's low and shorting it when it's high. The mood of the words is very different, of course. The political arbitrage of supporting those with low status and attacking those with high status is typically framed as a moral imperative, while the financial arbitrage of buying assets with low value and selling assets of high value is usually portrayed as a dispassionate mechanism for gaining financial capital. But recall that people do sometimes make moral arguments for buying low and selling high. It helps markets become more efficient. So you might invert the mood of the words on the other side too, and think of afflicting the comfortable and comforting the afflicted as a dispassionate mechanism for gaining political capital. There's a related observation. The concept of buy low, sell high assumes there are many different assets to choose from, many axes to arbitrage. By contrast, the concept of afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted tacitly assumes only one axis of powerful versus weak. However, multiple axes of power exist. For example, a man who organizes $1 million for charity may be economically comfortable, yet can be socially weak relative to the establishment journalist who decides to afflict him for his tweets. So the ability to designate just who exactly is comfortable and who is afflicted is itself a form of power. Someone who can pick who to label as comfortable, who can pick the axis of political arbitrage, can keep knocking down the comfortable while themselves remaining very comfortable. And that means the concept of afflicting the comfortable and comforting the afflicted can also be a mechanism for maintaining political capital. Putting these ideas together, once you start reclassifying much of the moral language flying through the air as a kind of political arbitrage, you can start thinking about it more rationally. Political arbitrage involves backing a faction that is politically weaker today than it could or should be. An early backer that risks their own political capital to make a faction more justly powerful can also gain a slice of that power should it actually materialize. Think about the status that accrued to the founding fathers, to the early Bolsheviks, to Mao's victorious communists, to the civil rights activists, or to the Eastern European dissidents after the Soviets fell. These very different groups of social revolutionaries. Once we see the mapping between financial and political arbitrage, we realize there is a market for revolutionaries. Today, there are two kinds of revolutionaries, technological and political. And there are two kinds of backers of these revolutionaries, venture capitalists and philanthropists. The backers seek out the founders, the ambitious leaders of new technology companies and new political movements, and that is the market for revolutionaries. Equipped with this framework, you can map the tech ecosystem to the political ecosystem. You can analogize tech founders to political activists, venture capitalists to political philanthropists, tech trends to social movements, YC Startup School to the Oslo Freedom Forum, the High Growth Handbook to Beautiful Trouble, startups to NGOs, big companies to government agencies, Crunchbase to Charity Navigator, and so on. Just as there is an entire ecosystem to source and back tech founders, there is an entire ecosystem to do so for political activists. It's less explicit in key respects, of course. There aren't term sheets between political philanthropists and their young protégés. There aren't exits to the tune of billions of dollars. And we don't usually see political activists bragging about their funding in the same way that tech founders talk up their investors. Indeed, often the funding trail is intentionally obscured to frustrate opposition research. But the process of going from a revolutionary's bright idea to a small group with a bit of funding to a mass movement is similar to the journey of a tech startup. And the end game can be even more ambitious. If the top tech founders end up running companies like Google and Facebook, the top political activists end up running countries like Myanmar and Hungary. It's going public in a different way. Take another look at the careers of political activists as varied as Aung San Suu Kyi, Viktor Orban, Václav Havel, Hamid Karzai, Ahmad Chalabi, Joshua Wong, Liu Xiaobo, and the like. All of them fit this model. Western resources back them to come to power and build pro-Western governments in their region. That doesn't mean these political founders always won, Wong and Xiaobo very much did not, or executed well, Karzai and Chalabi did not, or even stayed west-aligned indefinitely, Suuki and Orban did not. But if you track each of their careers back, you'll see something like this episode, when Soros was funding Orban, and both were on the same side as revolutionary forces against the Soviets. At that point in time, Soros was the philanthropist and Orban his protege, much as a venture capitalist might back an ambitious young founder. That's a classic example of how backers seek leaders in the market for revolutionaries. Startup societies reunify technological and moral progress. You might find it surprising or disquieting to think about all these different political revolutions as being similar to VC-backed startups. But revolutions are difficult to bootstrap, so there's often a great power sponsor. The French were crucial to the American Revolution, for example. What's the relevance for us? Well, the startup society reunifies the concepts of technological and political revolution, pulls together the two different kinds of progress, and presents a new path to power. Because now both the tech founder and the political activist can declare themselves presidents of a startup society. Backers can fund startup societies using the mechanisms of tech out in the open with explicit contracts and consent by all citizens, but they can also achieve the moral innovation desired by the political revolutionaries. And if these startup societies are built out on the frontier, whether digital or physical, then the moral innovations are no longer imposed top-down, but adopted bottom-up by the people who opt in. That gives a better way to achieve the goals of ambitious young political reformers. In short, once we see that a tech founder builds a startup company to effect economic change, and a political activist builds a social movement to effect moral change, we can see how the startup societies we describe in this work combine aspects of both. Two ideologies, the spatial theory of voting. Now we turn to left and right. The simplest approach is to talk about the left and right as if they are permanent categories. You'll hear this when people talk about the left and the right as groups. The second order approach is to contest this binary. People will correctly note that realignments happen, that the left-right dichotomization doesn't fully encode political behavior, that the masses aren't as ideologically consistent as the elites, that the categories vary over time, and so on. The third order approach is to acknowledge this complexity but invoke the spatial theory of voting, which allows us to quantify matters. As reviewed in this PDF, the spatial theory of voting allows us to analyze everything from congressional votes to Supreme Court decisions to newspaper editorials. When we do so, the first principal component of political variation does indeed correspond to the left-right spectrum. The fourth order approach is to then note that this real axis actually rotates over time. It's more about relative tribal positioning, voting with members of the same political tribe, than absolute ideological positioning, voting for a constant ideological position. Revolutionary tactics eventually succeed in gaining power for one tribe, and ruling class tactics eventually fail to defend power for another tribe. So the left and right gradually switch over historical timescales even as the tribal